welcome to the Pewtercast. Today is Monday, May 15th, 2017, and this is episode 35, The Camp Roster. I'm Brent Allen, one of your hosts, and with me, as always, is our co-host, Ren Dax. Hey, Ren, how you doing, buddy?
Never better. Been a little while. It's been 2 weeks, a solid 2 weeks before, we were getting on here and there and talk about the draft or other things that was going on in Bucks that we just couldn't wait. And so I feel like it's been like months since we got to sit down and talk Buccaneer football. Lots happened, so let's get to it.
Yeah, it's certainly been a lot. As you say, there's just been, for a while there, it seemed like we were jumping on like every couple of days, right?
We were.
And now it's been like a full 2 weeks. It's like, let's get back and talk Bucks football. Even though football is not quite here just yet. Guys, we've got a big episode for today. Now that we've kind of come through free agency and through what I kind of call the non-re-signings, all those people that we let go, that was a big topic. We came through the draft. We came through this whole Hard Knocks thing. We came through undrafted free agents and those kind of signings. We did our first rookie minicamp. We had phase 1 of OTAs. We had tryouts. And as it is right now, the camp roster, the 90-man roster is set. So today we're going to be taking a look at the team kind of as it stands right now. That's all 90 guys. And then for our top 3, Ren and I are going to be discussing our top 3 surprise roster cuts that the Bucks could make throughout camp. And then we're going to round out the show with our brand new fan interaction segment. Content of that segment provided by you, our beloved listeners. So guys, all that and more is coming your way on today's episode. So Ren, let's do it. You're listening to episode 35, The Camp Roster. All right, so, Ren, when you and I were discussing what to do for this episode, we kind of kept spinning around talking about the undrafted free agents and maybe kind of some of the lesser-known people who are on the team right now. And we kind of kept trying to figure out how do we make this more interesting than just giving our listeners a list of like 30-some-odd people that they've never heard of, and chances are they're never going to hear from 75, 80% of those guys again anyway. It just didn't seem like a very interesting thing, but as we listen to some of the other Bucks podcasts out there, and they're talking about some of these guys too. One thing we noticed was they kept talking about people like as individual players and why we should care about each one, and to listen to them, talk about a lot of these undrafted free agents, it makes you want to just sign them all to the roster. But nobody was talking about it in the context of the larger team, right? Of the larger roster as a whole. And so that's kind of how we're going to approach tonight's topic as we go through and we look at the roster as a whole to get really an overview of what we're taking into camp with us and who could eventually make it onto that 53-man roster. Because Ren, you and I both know that collectively, that's everybody's main goal at this point is make that 53-man roster. And we won't know who that is until like September, right? So Ren, you're kind of our resident expert on all these unknown guys. So I'll be letting you talk about these players as we get to them. But I want us to take a moment and just kind of start with the end in mind about talking about that 53-man roster. because there's only so many spots that we can dedicate to each position. So I wanted to take a few minutes and just talk about how many players at each position we think the Bucs will keep. And I think that'll help kind of give us context as we look at these different position battles that are going on. So why don't we run these down? Ren, when it comes to the quarterback, how many positions on the active roster do you think the Bucs will keep this year at quarterback?
Oh, well, we're starting right out of the gate about something that's changed from the year before.
Yeah.
I've only put down 2. I don't think they're going to carry 3. We said it a few times on different podcasts how Ryan Griffin was never active for a game, but he was kept on the 53-man roster for 2 years. So basically, Jason Light and company have been running a 52-man roster for the past 2 years. So I went ahead and put it out there that I think the Bucs are only going to carry 2 this year as far as the 53-man, and they'll both be dressing. So I guess that opens a roster spot, and that's what I have.
All right, well, we'll see where that goes. Now, Ren, you actually did a little bit of research and went and saw what we had opening day last year, right? Like what each position and the number of people we had at each position on opening day last year. You have that number. Is that right?
That is correct. Last year it was 3 quarterbacks.
3 quarterbacks. Okay. So I agree with you. I said 2. I understand why they kept a third one on the roster for the last 2 years. The reason for that is now passed. So I agree. We're going to be at 2. How about running back? How many position spots do you think we'll dedicate to running back this year?
Last year they had 3. Some people might forget, besides Doug Martin, Charles Sims, the guy that was on the 53-man roster for the Atlanta game was Mike James. Mm-hmm. He hadn't injured himself yet and basically got an injury settlement and was sent on his way. But this year, I think it's a very fluid situation. And for what the guys they have in camp, I'm counting 4 on the 53-man roster opening day.
Yeah, once again, you and I are in total agreement on that. I do think we'll go with 4. Obviously we'll at least have 3. And I will say this: I do think Doug Martin will make this team, or at least that is what things are looking like right now. Is that Doug Martin can make this team? So but he won't be there for those first 3 games, and he doesn't count against the roster. So we very well could see 4 people or 3 guys going into those first couple of games, and then we add in a 4th. But we'll need some depth.
That's not how I have it.
No, what do you think?
I have it 4 week 1, and then they're going to have to make a decision week 4 when Doug Martin comes back.
Well, there you go. It absolutely could go that way because as we saw last year, running back is a position that can get a lot of injuries, and if you get bit by the injury bug in that position, you need some depth. You need some people that you can go to. So to have 4 people absolutely makes sense. All right, now how about wide receiver?
Wide receiver, I'm sticking with the norm, sticking with 5. They went with 5 last year, and I think that way they're going to stick with 5 again.
All right, very good. Yeah, 5 sounds good. I think I initially had 7 down for wide receiver as I was looking, and that also included guys that really would mostly just play special teams. We'll see. We'll see how
you
those
had
numbers.
7.
Yeah, I had 7.
I'd be interested to see where you pull those 2 spots from.
Yeah, it'll be
as we go down
like
the
I
list.
said. Well, as I did my list, it was very. I think I did it in about 30 seconds, and it was very cursory. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't put a ton of thought behind it. So I was just kind of.
Did it add up to 53?
It did add up to 53, as my Excel spreadsheet tells me. So, all right. How about tight end? How many guys do you think we'll keep at tight end?
Same as last year, 5. I think we'll be opening weekend. I think we'll have 5 on the 53-man roster.
Yeah, I agree. 5. I absolutely think that's what we'll go with. How about fullback?
Fullback, I have 0.
Me too.
No fullback
because we know that they like having that that versatility between a guy who can be both fullback and tight end, and I think they'll give that spot more to they'd rather even carry an extra tight end who can do that. And that's really, I guess, why they have 5 as opposed to just 4 tight ends on the roster because of that. They can give that spot there. So I agree. All right, offensive line. How many offensive linemen do you think will be carrying into the 53-man roster?
Once again, sticking with what they had last year, and I'm staying with 9.
All right, moving on to defense. Let's go over at the defense. Defensive ends. How many defensive ends do you think we'll keep this year?
Ooh, I put them all together. I put the whole D line together.
Okay.
defensive line and defensive tackles and defensive ends. Last year, we carried 10 into the Falcons game, and actually I'm taking one away, and I think they're going to go with 9. And it's really hard because a lot of the players play 2 positions.
Right.
A lot of other guys can play tackle and end. So, like Robert Ayers is listed as defensive end, but he played a lot of defensive tackle this year. He might not play a lot of defensive tackle this year, but that's kind of the reason why I lumped them all together. So I dropped one guy, and I'm going with 9 defensive linemen.
Well, once again, you and I actually agree. I had 9. Now, I split them out. I said we had 5 ends and 4 defensive tackles, and that's based on their position as they stand on the roster right now, like how they're listed on the roster. But if I lump them together, that is also 9, which means I still have 2 spots out there that I need to steal from somewhere that you haven't. Let's move on to the linebacker core. How many linebackers do you think we'll take into the 53-man roster?
I'm adding one. I think there's a lot of truth to this Mike Smith rumor running a lot more 3-4 defenses, basically because the type of defensive end they're drafting or linebackers that they've brought into camp. They signed as undrafted free agents that can put their hand on the ground or stand up on the end and rush the passer. All these guys have a lot of tackles for loss. They're downhill guys. They get after it. They're not really a lot of sideline to sideline guys. So I added a linebacker because they only carried 5 last year, 3 starters and 2 backups. So I added one, and I'm going with 6 this year.
Fair enough. So you have 6. So that actually is going to be where the 2 come from, because I actually only had 4 going into this. But I miffed on that one because I just put the 3 starters and then the 1 backup. But I forgot about us having the second guy in there. So hey, that's where the 2 come from. But I'll go back and talk about my 7 wide receivers here in just a moment. Let's finish this out. All right, cornerbacks. How many cornerbacks do you think we run with on the team?
Same as last year, 6. I like it. 6 is good.
And if anyone is doing the math, because I agree with you, it will be 6. Then that means, actually, we haven't done the other one. Safeties. How many safeties do you think we got?
Originally, I tried to go with 3, but I couldn't justify it because I wanted to carry 10 defensive linemen. But I had to drop a defensive lineman and go back to 4. I think that's what they did last year at the Atlanta game, and I think that's what they're going to do again. They're going to have 4 safeties on the opening day roster.
All right, and then that's going to leave us with special teams: a kicker, a punter, and a long snapper. Are we just sticking with the standard 3 on that?
Yeah. We're not going to have a long snapper also kick or punt.
Right.
And Brian Anger's not going to be out there kicking field goals. So yeah, those 3.
You don't think we might keep both Nick Folk and Roberto Aguayo?
I don't think so. I don't like. I can't even make up a scenario that would be plausible that anyone out there listening would buy. Yeah. Without calling me a retard.
Except for the fact that we have guaranteed that we will be paying one of those 2 guys $750,000 just to sit home. So but do you eat up a roster spot with that? I don't know. It could be okay. Let me go back and talk about the wide receiver spot just for a second. And this was kind of what I was thinking as I was going through that spot was one, like I mentioned, special teams, because a lot of these guys play special teams. As I'm looking at we currently have 11 wide receivers on the roster right now. But the other thing too is I'm just curious, as we have in Mike Evans now and Deshaun Jackson and Chris Godwin and certainly Adam Humphries kind of as that core 4 wide receivers. I just kind of, just to add a little bit more depth, because certainly wide receiver was one of those positions that we got hit with big time last year, and we had to dive deep. So I just feel like they might want a little extra padding. Plus, they might want to rotate their guys a little bit more this year, which is why I kind of went with that. But I could certainly understand, there's certainly a need at linebacker to carry a few more people there as well. So we'll see that. All right. So we both have 53 men. That's where we believe that the 90-man roster will eventually have to get down to. Now, if we compare those numbers, Ren, just to who's currently on the roster, here's what we're looking at. We said that there'd be 2 quarterbacks. We currently have 4. We said that there'd be 4 running backs. There's currently 8. We said that there'd be, you said 5, I said 7 wide receivers. There's currently 11. Tight ends, we both said 5. There's currently 6. So that means one of those guys isn't going to be here. We said 0 fullbacks. We actually have 1 fullback currently listed on the roster. Offensive linemen, we said that we'd carry 9. And we have, let's see, I split them out. It looks like we have 15 currently on the roster. So, a handful of those guys will either have to drop to practice squad, or a handful of them will drop to practice squad. The other ones will go away. We have 4 people currently in special teams. Of course, that's that Nick Folk, Roberto Aguayo matchup there. On the defensive line, we currently also have 15 people, and that's if you include Jacquez Smith, who still hasn't signed his tender, his little offer sheet yet. What's going on, Jack? Let's do it. Get it done. Be on the team. Let's make it happen. But we said that we'd be running with 9 of those guys. As far as linebackers go, we have 10 on the roster right now. Again, you said 6, I said 4. Although I'm actually raising my hand to say I was probably mistaken on that. We said we'd carry 6 cornerbacks, and there's currently also 10 on the roster there. And we'd carry 4 safeties, and there's 6 on the roster. So as we can see, there's definitely going to be some cuts that come to each one of those positions to get it down to the numbers that we need to be. So let's take a look at these different positions and see who we have in each position. How's that sound?
Yeah, who's going home?
Yeah, well, let's start with the big one, quarterback. Now we've got this guy. He's been around for a couple years now, Jameis Winston. I've tentatively penciled him in as our starter.
Yeah, definitely use pencil.
Yeah, definitely. And just so the listening folks know out there, because this is an audio podcast, not a video podcast, and they can't see what I'm looking at. I've got my whiteboard up here in the studio, and I spent some time today and actually laid out everybody according to their position, and then I color coded it with blue, kind of saying, hey, these are my starting people right now that, definitely I think they'll probably make the team. And then I have green up there, which is like, those are the backups, or maybe they're gonna have to battle for some, I don't want to say they're on the bubble, but they're just not our starters, but they're probably going to make the team. And then I've got a bunch of guys in red, and those are the guys that may make the team, may not make the team. Those are going to be the guys who I think are really battling it. So that's what I'm looking at as we go through here. So penciling in Jameis Winston, I got him in blue, because he might make the team.
But just put him in black, permanent Sharpie up there. Yeah. We're kidding, obviously, listeners. Yeah, we know. We're just teasing. Yeah. If anyone's out there like slackjaw or
losing their mind, what do you mean Jameis isn't going to make the team?
Yeah. He's in permanent Sharpie. Yeah.
I think when we start talking about them according to their first name as opposed to their last name, they're just on the team.
Right.
All right. So we got Griffin Renfrey and how do you say this guy's name? Liafu. We have Ryan Griffin, Sean Renfrey, and Seth Liafu as our
Sifo.
Who?
Isn't it Sifo Liafu?
See, I don't know. I don't know.
The only interesting thing about this guy is that Jack Thompson is his uncle, and Jack Thompson was the throne Samoan and actually was a Buccaneers quarterback for a while, started a couple years, and we actually traded for him at one point. Besides that, he's just a camp arm. He's from Colorado, a 4-year starter at Colorado, but it was pretty apparent during rookie camp. It was windy, but the receivers were struggling to get balls put on their hands and put on their bodies because of these guys that were there. So he's a camp arm. It's a cool story. Being he'll probably get a couple of storylines once people get to talk to him a little bit more. When he comes in for training camp, because like I said, he is Jack Thompson is his uncle. And besides that, yeah, he's just a camp arm. So if we get his name wrong, I'm sorry, but back when we did the love him or leave him, he's definitely got a seat on the bus.
And then how about and then Sean Renfrey also? You think he's a camp arm, or the real question is who's going to be the backup? It's never been a question of who's going to be our starting quarterback. It's who's going to be our backup quarterback. Are we going to stay with Ryan Griffin, who we've invested a roster spot in for the last 2 years to protect him, or could it possibly be one of these other guys?
I think it's Griffin's job to lose, but like Jason does, he's brought in serious competition. I mean, Renfrey was with Cutter at Atlanta as well, so he's familiar with the system. So they got 2 young guys that are familiar with Dirk Cutter's system, and they're going to go at it. I am excited to see Ryan Griffin actually get to play with like the ones a lot because Winston's not going to play that much during preseason, and the twos instead of him coming in like kind of playing with the twos a little bit and mostly playing with just the mop up guys and all the guys that probably aren't going to make the team. He probably was only on the field with like 3 guys at any one time that actually were going to make the Buccaneers. So it'll be telling, and I think they'll both get their shots at that, working with a lot of the ones and mostly twos. I think they'll switch it around from preseason game to preseason game. But yeah, that's the battle. Renfree Griffin. So if I had to pencil somebody in, I'm picking Griffin just because he's been with the Bucs. Like Renfree has come back to Cutter, but like we've talked about earlier, Renfree's been on all the meetings, was on all the road trips, been on the roster. So he's gotten the schooling, he's gotten the grooming, and it's just up to him to take the next step.
Right. So what do you think the chances are? What are the odds that none of these guys make it and we wind up signing some sort of veteran who's kind of floating around out there as a backup?
If they sign a veteran as a backup, I'm not going to give you odds because I don't know. It's because they both look, I don't want to say terrible, but they're not good enough. The team won't be comfortable with them playing backup, and they just might do what they did last year. They'll pick up a veteran, somebody maybe like Ryan Fitzpatrick who's out there, somebody like that to give an extra set of eyes to Winston, and if he goes down, they have a real chance of winning games. And then keep one of these kids, whoever wins out, as the third starting quarterback. Now, if they've gotten their shot, I don't know if they keep 3 on the roster to protect them. Maybe they just keep them down on the practice squad as like an emergency quarterback, and everybody can come and pluck them up at any time. But they're such unknown commodities. I really can't give you a percentage. All I can remember about Renfree is he just checks down a lot, but that was the read. It's all basic vanilla defense. So I hope it doesn't happen. Put it that way. I don't want it to happen. I don't think it happened. Could it happen? Yeah, but I think they have to look. They both have to look pretty bad for that to happen.
Yeah, and just for the record, from my own personal opinion, I think the odds are very, very low. I think we will roll with Griffin or one of these other guys. I don't think we're looking at all or will be looking at all unless, as you say, unless something just stupid happens or they just look horrible, or
one could be, looking like the clear-cut number 2 guy, and then like the third preseason game, he blows his knee out. Maybe he gets hit late, and then that all changes it as well.
Well, sure. But injury changes everything. Barring anything weird like that happening, I think 95% chance I'd be shocked if we wound up signing a vet. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about running backs. We have 8 currently on the roster. That includes Doug Martin, Charles Sims, Jacquizz Rodgers, Jeremy McNichols, our draft pick from this year, Peyton Barber, our undrafted free agent from last year. We also have Russell Hansborough, who was with us quite a bit last year. Quayon Hicks, I believe is how you say his name. Quavon Hicks and Blake Sims to round out the running back roster. Thoughts on these guys?
It's really interesting. Obviously, Rodgers and Sims and Jeremy McNichols and Peyton Barber kind of have the leg up. But Russell Hansborough actually got into some games last year because all the injuries we had. Like you said, he was with us a lot. Quavon Hicks, I'm not really sure why he's here in the running back and not up there with the fullbacks. This is the guy that blocked for Nick Chubb and blocked for Todd Gurley, who's now with the Rams at Georgia. He is a fullback. I'm not really sure why they have him at running back. Maybe that's where they slotted him. And Blake Sims is really interesting. He was the quarterback for Alabama, won a national championship.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah,
that guy.
Yeah, he's been trying to catch on. He's been to a few camps and a few teams, never anything really serious. He actually at one point signed. I don't know if he ever went over, but he actually signed with the AGL, which is the Australian Gridiron League.
Okay.
I wish I had it with me. I should have looked it up, but it's a pretty cool team name. It's it's like the Saskatchewan Devil Mouths or something, but like really like a minor league baseball team type of name.
That's funny.
But then the Bucks
Except
picked them up.
Saskatchewan is a province in Canada, not Australia. So all of our Canadian listeners are going, hey.
Yeah, and we have Australian listeners too, so they're probably I got to think about that. I'm not insulting anybody. It took me a while. It took me some digging to find even any information on the AGL. So give me a little credit.
I got it.
For that.
My buddy, he's from Australia and lived here for several years. Went back. A Nyren from Australia. He would always call it. You watching the gridiron. Well, you're watching the gridiron as you're coming in here. So always made me laugh. The Australian Gridiron League. Oh, fun. So Blake Sims was that guy. So out of that, as you look, do you have any thoughts on how this shapes out?
My four are where I got him. Rogers, of course, he's kind of like the starter at the very least for the first 3 years, unless McNichols comes out of nowhere, which I guess it wouldn't be nowhere. But unless McNichols looks really good and pick up the offense, they really like his pass protection. It's one of the reasons they got him. Basically, he's kind of like Jaquiz Rogers. He's kind of the perfect mixture of Doug Martin and Charles Sims, except I think he's better at Rogers at both.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like Jaquiz Rogers 2.0, a little younger, a little faster, a little bigger. Well, everyone's a little bigger than Jaquiz Rogers. So I have Jaquiz Rogers on there till McNichols really gets the offense down. Of course, I have McNichols. I have Sims because he's such a third down threat, and if you use him properly, he really is a weapon. And anytime you hear Jason Light talk, he always talks about Peyton Barber. He's like, he loves his upside. So those are the four guys. Quavon Hicks might be able to make a spot, as if he might go from running back and to become a true fullback, and the other true fullback, which we'll get to, like those guys might make a push for the fifth tight end spot, depending on how good they are at actually blocking, if they blow everyone away. But I don't think so. So that's who I have as a four that's making it. And Hansbrough, practice squad guy, and poor Blake Sims. I don't know. I'm going to be interested to see him get the ball and run. He's something I'm really interested just to see, because coming from, a quarterback for a national championship school, and you just can't, and it's not like he was trying to catch on at quarterback. He was always trying to catch on as a running back. Right. And he would just spend like a couple of days in camp and then move on to another camp and just be there a couple of days. So he's never really even had a place where he made the second or third cut. It was down to like the last cut. He's just he's really bounced around. But Jason Light finds those people who end up making big contributions, undrafted free agents. He's a future contract guy, but same thing. It's like the same thing as the offseason. So he was going to keep my eye on.
Yeah, and it's guys like that that kind of they become the Adam Humphreys and the Cam Brates. We find them, we didn't really know who they were. But when they actually get their shot, they take advantage of it, and he could be that. And I'm not saying that I have it. All I know about Blake Sims is the fact that he used to play quarterback. He's trying to move over as running back and make it in the league. That is the limit of what I know about the guy. But I'm sitting here wondering, sitting on the front porch out here, to go back to our last conversation about quarterback. And I'm not saying I think Blake Sims makes the 53-man roster, but certainly we have 10 spots on the practice squad that we need to fill out. And to have a guy who might have a little bit of versatility that, if we're only going to carry the two quarterbacks, I would assume we're going to carry a third quarterback on the practice squad. But to have a guy who, I like that idea, a guy that's got a little bit of versatility that, oh my God forbid something really happens to our top guys, there is at least a little bit of something there that we could see maybe develop possibly. Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, that's how Hansbrough got on the team, and that's how Peyton Barber stuck around. Yeah. Actually started making the 53-man roster and going on there. So, I mean,
it'll be interesting. And there were times where these guys were cut for a week or two before getting assigned back to a practice squad, before getting moved up to the team. So, all right, so that is running back. Let's keep moving on to our wide receiver spot. This is one I said we'd keep a few extras. You said 5.
Wait, sorry to cut you off.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I went and looked up the name. I can't even say it. It was so weird. It's the Wollongong Devils. So WOLL, Wol, ONGONG. Wollongong Devils. It's a city in Australia, apparently. I think it's like on the coast, and it's pretty well known for fishing. But that's who he signed with, the Wollongong Devils.
Wollongong Devils. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Everything else is pretty easy. It's like Brisbane, Central Coast, Gold Coast, Logan, Newcastle, North Coast, Sydney, and then the Wollongong.
Wow.
So sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to get that right.
Interesting. All right, moving on.
And if anybody wants to look this up, the website is greatly improved, so you can actually see some players and stuff. So
there you go.
But
all right, wide receivers. I said we'd carry a few extra. On second thought, we're probably scale that down. I might split the difference and call it 6. You say 5, but we currently have 11 on the roster. Let me read through them real quick. It's Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, Chris Godwin, Adam Humphries, Dante Dye, Josh Huff, Freddie Martino, Bernard Reedy, Thomas Spurback, Darrell Walker, and Jesus Wilson, or Jesus Wilson, however they pronounce that. So how about these guys? There's obviously some very familiar names on that list and a couple of new names that I've never heard before. So what do you think about these guys?
Like you were saying earlier, there's a big 4. And then for me, since I picked 5, I think the last position is going to be battled over. And this could change because receiver is something you can really kind of come out of nowhere and make the tail end of a team, such as we always like to say Adam Humphries did. Josh Huff looked terrible with us, fumbles, dropping the ball.
Well, because listen, when we name like a whole play after you, the Huff Muff, that's never good. Never good.
But I still like his speed and his return ability. If he can get that straightened out. And I also like Darrell Walker, the guy from Texas A&M, was actually Mike Evans' teammates. He went to the Canadian League and he put up huge numbers, but that's not really that difficult in the Canadian League. But he's considered one of the best receivers up there. So those are 2 guys I kind of picked to battle for that 5th spot. Dante Dye, we know about him. Small college Heidelberg, he caught onto the team. His hands are a little suspect, but he has great speed. Freddie Martino, I know Jason Light loves his athleticism and his size. And he actually got with all the injuries, wide receiver, he got in the game and actually caught a touchdown pass. Bernard Reedy, same type of guy like Freddie Martino, just kind of hanging around. Both those guys. Speedy Reedy. All those guys, both those guys, Martino and Reedy, were with Dirk Cutter in Atlanta. So a lot of these like tail end positions, when you don't have enough talent, you kind of surround yourself with people that are familiar. So the learning curve is a lot quicker. Thomas Spurback, another Boise guy. Since we brought up, there's a lot of guys from Boise State on this team. He might be a surprise. I don't know really a lot about him, but with the pipeline from Dirk Cutter, from coaching there, and some of the players that he coached are now on the coaching staff, he sort of has his ear to the ground there and friends in the program. So this guy might surprise people. And the last guy, Jesus, I think it's Jesus Wilson, played at Florida State. Obviously anybody, people are going to ask him or ask Jameis about him, and he's going to praise him and say how good he is. But so that's a little background on those guys. But I think it really comes down to if nothing happens as far as people just flaming out altogether, I think it's going to come down to Josh Huff and Darrell Walker, the Texas A&M guy from the Canadian Football League, for the last spot.
And so that leaves Dante Dye, Josh Huff. I know you said Josh Huff. Dante Dye, Freddie Martino, Bernard Reedy, those guys that spent time off and on the practice squad last year, back off and on the practice squad this year. And maybe one of these other guys sneaks in there, knocks one of those guys out. So, Yeah, I could get with that. I could get with that. Yeah, I could roll with that. I was just sitting here thinking, Dante Dye was a guy that I really liked as our returner last year before he got hurt. To which, of course, Adam Humphries had to step in there, and of course, we never really had a true kickoff returner or punt return. I don't know, one of those two, whichever one Adam Humphries was not doing. We never
Kickoff.
we never filled that role that he wasn't doing very well. So there's a piece of me that Dante Dye got cut last year due to an injury. No other reason other than an injury. Had an injury settlement. Had to wait a bunch of weeks after his injury was healed, and wound up coming back to the Bucs, which I think he got picked up by another team for a little bit and then got cut by them, and we were able to pick him back up. So there's a little bit of me that would like to see him be that guy. Because I do think he could still offer something if he is in at least as good a shape before his injury now. If he's in as good a shape now as he was before his injury, I think he might have a real shot at doing something. But I don't know. I'm a little old nostalgic guy. I like seeing those guys stick around, who've been on the team for a while, which will probably play into our conversation for this next grouping. Tight end. This is a spot where we said we're probably going to keep 5. And we currently have 6 on the roster. And those 6 would be another guy we're penciling in, O.J. Howard. Not really sure where he's going to land.
I think he'll make his first. Yeah, he'll make the team his first training camp.
Possibly,
but he better mind his P's and Q's.
Possibly, but competing right there. League leader in tight ends for touchdowns last year, Mr. Cameron Brate. Tight end veteran for the Buccaneers, Luke Stalker. Alan Cross. A guy who's getting a ton of praise, Anthony Auclair out of Canada, and Tevin Westbrook, a guy that we saw a lot last year. What do you think about these guys?
You got to get rid of one, right? And what I have down as locks, this might surprise some people, I have Brate, Howard, and I actually have Auclair before any of the others. It's been rumored that if Stevie T was off the board in the 7th round, and that was the guy they were looking at with Anthony Auclair.
Right.
They love his blocking ability, they love his size, they love his toughness. So I think he's a lock to make the team, even if they have to hide him and develop him somewhere. I think just his intangibles and his size and his athletic ability, they just want to keep him on here. So that brings me down to Cross, Stalker, and Tevin Westbrook. Westbrook's to make or break it year. Was a defensive end at Florida, moved over to tight end. He did play some tight end at Florida and has been on the practice squad.
He was a guy you were a big fan of last year, wasn't he?
He was one of like those guys, like how you like Dante Dye. He was just a guy that I liked. Like I look at his measurables and I look how he played defensive end, and now he's a tight end, and a lot of like very good tight ends in the NFL like started another position or played another sport. He was from Florida. I'm a Gator, so he was a guy I was pulling. He was a guy I'm pulling for. So, but he's only got 1 year in, but that's because he's had put 2 years on the practice squad. So it's kind of a make it or break it year. If you're a position player and you've never been brought up to the team that I pretty sure, I don't think he's ever been brought up to the 53 man, even with the injuries that happened to Myers, Stalker, and Brate all at three different times last year. So he's on the outside looking in. And so then it becomes to like Luke Stalker or Alan Cross. Cross might be the odd man out, but Luke Stalker might be the odd man out. The only reason I think Luke Stalker stays is because of experience, because that is an extremely young tight end group in that tight end room with a rookie tight end coach. Now, he was in the room a lot last year with the tight ends, but this is his first year as an assistant coach, and he's the tight end coach. So I think the Bucs will keep Luke Stalker for the veteran leadership there. So it comes between Westbrook and Cross, and that's going to be a battle to watch.
Yeah.
Which one of those dudes better? Alan Cross played a lot last year, but I think Tevin Westbrook's size, if he picks it up, his size and athleticism. I mean, Tevin Westbrook's 6'5", 257. Alan Cross is 6'1", 235. So all things being equal, I think the Bucks would rather go with Tevin Westbrook. But, we'll see. So that's who I have. I have Brate Howard and Leclerc, and the last two positions. Well, there's only, that's easy because there's only 6 on the roster, and only one has to go. I'm saying keep Stocker, and then Cross and Tevin Westbrook will be fighting the last spot.
Yeah, I agree. Let's talk about somebody who actually might be fighting for that final 5th man spot on the tight end roster, although he is not a tight end. And that would be the only person on the roster currently listed as a fullback, Austin Johnson. Now, you and I both said that we're not going to carry a solid fullback. So this guy would have to double up a little bit of duties. I've never heard of this guy before in my life. He was a guy that I put in red on my board. Even though he's the only person in his category, and that's the bad color. That's the color that I think means you're probably either not going to make the roster or you're going to be fighting hardcore. And just so you guys know, in the tight end spot, I didn't have anybody in red. They were all either blue or green. So what do you know about Austin Johnson as a fullback?
Nothing. He went to Tennessee. He has 3 years in. I don't know anything about him. The only way he makes this team, there's 2 things going for him. One, Jason Light has been trying to fill the fullback position since he got here. He drafted Vitale. He drafted his name, the kid from Hawaii. 2 years ago.
Yeah,
or I guess 3 years
Joey
ago now.
Iosefa.
Joey Iosefa. So he has drafted a fullback 2 out of his 4 drafts. So he's been trying to fill the spot with a draft pick. So obviously he thinks it's an important spot. And the other thing going for him is if this O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate 2 tight end set works out really, really well, they could possibly put a fullback in there. And with a McNichols, who's great at pass pro and catching the ball, and then do a Brate, O.J. Howard, 1 wide receiver with a straight fullback, and you could throw out of that.
Right.
Because then you still got 4 guys going out with 6-man protecting. If Austin Johnson can pick up the blitz and things like that. So if it really takes off, and that might be a package they want to put in there where they're looking like they're going jumbo and then throw out of it. Possibly, but I wouldn't take him. I wouldn't change his color just yet on the whiteboard. I'm thinking he's red too.
Yeah, and I mean, you also got to look. Luke Stocker, what is he known for on this team? He's known for his blocking, right? Even look at a guy like Alan Cross, who, if memory serves right, the times that we really saw him last year, he was mostly blocking. He was not a guy going out for catches, even as a tight end. So, we do have that blocking tight end. Sort of kind of fullback position already within these other guys. So he would really have to show at least a little bit of versatility to be able to do something else. But, are you going to take the guy who's been bouncing around really new, or you can take a guy who's the veteran presence on the team? All other things being equal, you obviously take the guy who's the veteran presence on the team, or the guy who's had some playing time with the team at least anyway. So, I'm going to leave him in red for now, but it'll be an interesting thing to see. He'll be kind of I think he'll be like the mini Lombardi on the field. Like, he's the guy I'm looking for in the background to see what he's doing, but I don't think he's going to be a guy we're going to watch a whole lot, in the foreground of what's actually happening. So that brings us over to our offensive line. Now let's separate our offensive line a little bit as we talk about these guys.
Right.
We said we'd keep nine guys on the offensive line. We currently have 15. But that's of course between the different positions of offensive tackle, offensive guard, and center. And some people were a little chapped that we didn't, draft an offensive lineman, for as much as the powers that be have told us they like the group that they have. They like the group that they have. They like the group that they have. But of course, they've signed a few guys, in the offseason as well, a couple of futures contracts. But let's break it down. Why don't we go from the outside in? We'll start on offensive tackles. Of course, we have Donovan Smith and DeMar Dotson, who are my blue guys, the starting guys. We have Caleb Beninock, draft from last year. We had Leonard Wester. And then new guys, Cole Garrison, Kieran, and Michael Liedtke. I should mention, by the way, that some of these guys on the depth chart or on the roster are either listed as just an offensive lineman, And if they were listed as that, I put them in as a tackle. Just my own call. So that's a couple of these guys are listed actually not as a tackle, but as an offensive lineman. I just dropped them here. So, what do you got on these guys here, Ren?
I think, like you said, they like their line. I think it's a big uphill battle for any of these people you haven't heard of. If you're keeping 9, and here's the 9, you got Dot, you got Donovan Smith, you got Leonard Wester, who I've said many times they paid an outrageous amount for an undrafted free agent last year to secure his rights to get here. Benenot, last year draft choice. Marpet starter, Sweezy starter. Pamphil, who started last year, was a draft choice 3 years ago now. 3 years ago, can play guard or tackle. They brought back Holly. I think it's backup in case the Marpet experiment doesn't work, and for depth. And then the 9th person's Evan Smith, who's another center and can also play guard. So cracking that lineup, good luck to you. Mm-hmm. I really just don't see it. Even if like Pamphil wins, because Dirk Cutter did talk about Pamphil sliding over and trying the right tackle spot for Jameer Dotson, who, by the way, was an undrafted free agent as well. And just
signed a contract. DeMar Dotson just signed a contract last year, a big old one too.
Yeah. It wasn't a Jason Light fine, but these guys make the team and make money after that. So if you slide Pamphil over to Dot, then it'd be Dot, Sweezy, Marpet, and then who would they stick in? It'd be Evan Smith or Benenot. And then they would be playing between Marpet and Donovan Smith. So, I mean, I don't see anybody cracking this lineup, honestly. The person who I think is most in danger is probably Leonard Wester. I know people might say Joe Holly or Evan Smith, but I thought Evan Smith was in trouble last year. But he stuck around and made a team and, contributed a lot. He played center and he played guard at both times. So,
you know what really I think redeemed him last year?
What's that?
Was the fact he got rid of his hyphenated name.
What? He had a hyphenated name?
He was Evan Dietrich Smith. You remember that 2 years ago? And nobody likes that.
I didn't know that was him.
Yeah, same guy. Yeah. It was Evan Dietrich Smith. He just got rid of the Dietrich, and now it's just Evan Smith, and we liked him better. He played better. He didn't have the extra weight from the letters on the back of his jersey holding him down, is what it was.
That'll make you quicker.
Yeah, not at all.
And more streamlined.
I just offended everybody out there who has a hyphenated last name. My apologies.
So. And he's probably the only guy that I know that has a hyphenated last name that can drop it. I mean, isn't like mostly hyphenated last name? Isn't that sort of like a new thing where you get married and your wife wants to keep her last name?
Or you're the product of two parents who wanted to give you both of their last names? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but how can, if that's your name, how can you drop it? I guess you can get legally changed, but I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I've just never met a man that had a hyphenated last name that dropped it before. Or you just say, this is just what I'm going to go by. I don't care what the legal thing says. I'm just going to go by this name. Drop the Dietrich. Could be. Let's get back on topic. As far as the offensive line, I mean, we can go through these guys. The one guy who I have written in red right now, who I think might possibly crack this team, that might be a surprise, is Cole Garrison. I've read some cool things about him. I'm not seeing any tape. I'm interested to see what he can do. And he could potentially take this Leonard Wester spot, maybe one of the other ones, but I just don't see the other one. So just for sake, so I can go through it. So we'll kind of, I guess, mush all these together a little bit. On offensive guard, of course, we have Jared Sweezy and Kevin Pamphil, which is where I slid him in, although we know he can swing between a couple different positions. But there's also a guy named Jarvis Harrison who's come in. And then on center, I went ahead and listed Ali Marpet, even though he's still technically on the roster as a guard. And then there's Joe Holly, Evan Smith, and then we have Josh Allen, who we had as a futures contract from last year, and then a guy named James Stone. So, those are our camp guys. But as you say,
They like their team. They like their squad. They like the guys they got. And I think that's who they're going to roll with.
Yeah. And unfortunately for the center guys, like Josh Allen, like I heard on the Donovan and Alley show, like he's probably the strongest of all the guys. And he stuck around for most of the year. I think he disappeared at one point, but then came back. And James Stone was kind of a late season addition as well. So what they've got going for them is they've been in the system a little longer than all these guys. I do like your pull or your take on
Cole.
Oh, Cole, yeah, Cole Gardner,
Garrison.
Cole Garrison. Where are we at? Tackle.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, because he looks to be like a clone of Leonard Westard. Like, they're 3 pounds apart and they're the same height. So, and Westard didn't exactly have a bang up, oh my God, this guy came out of nowhere. But with offensive line, it usually takes a few years. So we'll see. Sure. Like I said, but yeah, not much is going to go on at the offensive line. And of course, once again, we can press it by unless there's injuries. But
right.
Yeah, they seem pretty set.
Yeah, and I think we'll see at least 2 of these guys drop to the practice squad, so some of them will still certainly be around for that. So, all right, moving on. We've already talked about it just a little bit, but just for sake of making sure we're clear on it, we said there would be 3 spots for our special teams. Brian Unger as the punter, a guy named Garrison Sanborn as our long snapper. There is no competition for either one of those 2 guys, but there is a little bit, just tiny little competition spot. Might see just a smidge of it on Hard Knocks this coming fall, which we'll certainly be talking about on our new show, Talking Knocks. Follow us on Twitter at Talking Knocks for that show specific info. But Nick Folk and Roberto Aguayo, those are the 2 guys. I've actually got them both in green. I have neither one of them in blue and neither one in red.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah.
What color you got those guys?
Yeah, I've got them in green because I think it could go either way. I really do. There's a piece of me that I think I've said it before on this show, and I'll say it again. I would like to see Roberto Aguayo come in and redeem himself and win that starting spot back, and I'd like to see him actually win it. Not just be handed it to him, like a little bit kind of happened last year. I want to see him win it. I want to see him come in and impress. But I don't know. It'll just be something to watch. But any thoughts on special teams, guys, or you want to move on?
No, real quick. Garrison Sanborn, basically he was a cap hit for Buffalo. He's had 8 years in the league, and the reason he became a free agent is because eventually teams just don't want to pay that much for a long snapper, and that's just why he was let go. And so Jason Light went out and got a good one. And since we're in such great cap health, we can pay a little more for a long snapper.
Right.
He's from Florida State. The only down part about it is they got rid of Dak Dellenbach, who I loved his name. He sounded like an 80s action hero to me. He was also from Florida State. But I think it was an upgrade. Well, maybe, I don't know, about, how the Paulia, it's like you only really learn a long snapper's name once they mess up. So it's very few bad snaps you see in the league. I think there's just a handful for all 32 teams, and how many long snaps are there in a game. So I don't want to say it's an upgrade, but I think you're going to do fine. Yeah, and I'm there with you. Except I would like for Aguayo to win it outright as well.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's going to.
Fair enough. Hey, Brian Anger, let's talk about him just real quick. He was Special Teams Player of the Year for the
we haven't talked about our boy in a while.
Yeah, I know. So let's talk about this guy. Had a phenomenal year last year. Do you think we see the same kind of year out of him this year, or will this, when you have such a great year, it's hard to match or top that year, year after year after year. So is it possible this is a down year? You think this will be a similar year as what we got last year? Any thoughts on Brian Anger as we head towards the season?
I think we'll see almost the exact same. The great play that everyone talks about, the Michael Jackson lean-in thriller thing.
Right.
Those 2 guys are still on the team. Josh Robinson and Ryan Smith. Those are the guys that took over as far as being very good gunners for Brian Anger after Russell Shepard got pulled off because he was actually ended up starting at the number 2 spot after a while because of all the injuries. So they're trying to save him for offense and keep him off special teams. So the gunners are the same. Like I said, the long snapper is a little different, but what that takes like a half day in camp, and might only take 2 snaps to be like, okay. I don't expect him to. He's not at the age where where his leg starts to leave you. We can't do this forever, or there'd be 55-year-old punters in the league. So, at one point, the strength of your leg is going to leave you, but he's not at that age. I don't expect any drop-offs, and the main reason why is because of the Josh Robinson and Ryan Smith duo going down as a gunner. They already know what to expect. They've had a year with this guy, and they've had success, and I don't expect it to drop off at all.
All right. Well, there you go. Hey, Bucks fans, I'll take just a moment to remind you. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about the offense, so to speak, of the team. And what do you think about Brian Anger? Is he going to have a similar year to last year? Worse, less, better? Who knows? Let us know on Twitter at the Pewtercast. Send us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Would love to know your thoughts on those specific players. Ren, how about we look at the defense? What do you say?
I'm ready.
All right, just a couple of positions left over here. What do you think? Defensive line, do we do that all together, or should we separate them out?
It's up to you. I can do either one.
Let's separate them out just for sake of, just so we can get a little clarity on it. Now, the defensive line is a little bit kind of like our offensive line. We have guys that shift and play both spots. So the guys that I have listed here are according to their position on the Buccaneers roster, which you can find on Buccaneers.com. So defensive ends, I currently have listed Robert Ayers, Chris Swaggy Baker, Will Golston, Noah Spence, George Johnson, Channing Ward, DeAndre Barnett, Evan Panfield, Ryan Russell, and then our unsigned restricted free agents, Jacquez Smith. We said there's 10 of those guys currently, and we said that we'd probably keep 4 or 5 of those guys. What do you think about these guys?
Well, just like you said, like if Chris Baker plays more defensive end than defensive tackle this year, I'll eat my cell phone, and I hope I don't have to do that. But yeah, so I'll just kind of go down the list because I did a little different. I kind of put them all together. Ayers is going to make the team. Obviously, Baker's going to make the team. Golson's going to make the team. I think George Johnson actually got a fight on his hands.
Mm-hmm.
Evan Panfield's a good story. He went to Purdue. So did Kevin Pamphee, which I've learned is his proper name, the proper way to say it. Panfield, we used to think his name was Pamfield, Pamfield. So that was kind of cool.
We got the name back.
It. I mean, that's it's going to be like that quarterback I was saying from Colorado. It's like, it's probably, yes, he got signed and it's great for him, but he's not going to crack this lineup. I highly doubt it.
Mm-hmm.
So the cool thing is going to be, he came from Purdue and almost has the same exotic last name as somebody else that's already on the team that came from Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Russell, Noah Spence, Channing Ward, and then of course, Jacques Smith. The guys that I have sort of on the bubble all kind of fighting for that 9th spot that are defensive ends. George Johnson, like I said, and then it's pretty guys that hung around and were on the team in the opening day roster, opening 53, and did help. Like Ryan Russell, Channing Ward, and Devontae Lambert. I think those are all guys that are going – oh, wait. Sorry, those aren't defensive ends. This is kind of like with offensive line. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I kind of did that wrong. But
no, you did, because those guys, all those guys you just named, are listed as defensive ends on the roster right now.
They are?
Yeah,
okay, then I didn't do it right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's who I think those are the guys to be fighting for the last spot. These guys like DeAndre Barnett from Southern Illinois, Evan, like we said, Panfield. Those guys are going to have a real hard time making the team, especially with a lot of the defensive ends be able to play defensive tackle or vice versa. That's why I dropped one from 10 to 9.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, the opening game against Atlanta, they had 10 defensive linemen on the roster, and that's why I'm putting them at 9, is because there's so much versatility there. And I It's going with the narrative that there's going to be a lot more 3-4 looks coming from Mike Smith this year. So it's going to be a tough lineup to crack there for the young kids.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. The people that I've kind of got penciled in blue here is Robert Ayers, Chris Baker, Will Golston, Noah Spence, and then honestly Jacquez Smith, because I'm just going to assume he's going to sign that little piece of paper and he's going to be on the team. So, if he does it, you got George Johnson, Channing Ward, and Ryan Russell, Evan Pamphil, and DeAndre Barnett, who are kind of sitting on the outside going, what about us? And we'll see. We'll see with that. All right, defensive tackle. Let's talk about those guys, the people who are specifically listed as DTs on the roster. Of course, would be Gerald McCoy, Clint McDonald, Silver Saligia, Stevie Tuikolovatu, because I'm not scared to say that name, and Devontae Lambert. Now that's 5 people right there, and if let's say we keep 5 defensive ends, we're only going to go with 9 for the whole line. So that means we only get 4 defensive tackles. So somebody's got to go. Who is it?
Devontae Lambert. It's going to be if we're going by the roster here, it's going to be I think Big Stevie Kulavatu, Tui Kulavatu is probably going to make the team. I also, in my heart of hearts, think Silver Siliga is going to make the team as well. I think the writing on the wall is there for Clinton McDonald just because the body size they're trying to pick up. Yeah. Chris Baker is going to play inside too, so now they have these 3 huge-bodied, 300-plus, 320-plus guys in there. But if we're doing it by the numbers, how you've broken it down, Devontae Lambert, he's definitely on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and Clint McDonald certainly, I think he could be down there. So it'll be interesting to see where we go with that. All right, moving over to linebacker, we've got 10 people currently on the list. I said 4, you said 6. I'll split the difference with you. We'll say 5. Linebackers currently on the roster: Quan Alexander, Levante David, Devontae Bond coming off IR, Kendall Beckwith, who may start the season, maybe not on IR, but on the PUP list, Darius Glanton from last year, and then we have Richie Brown, Riley Bulla? Below. I don't know how to say his name. Jeff Knox, Cameron Lynch, and Paul Magloire. I don't know. But those are the people that we have. What do you know about that? Obviously we know about Quan and Levante and our draft pick this year, Kendall Beckwith. Devontae Bond coming off IR. He spent the most of last year. Darius Glanton, we know he was our backup long snapper and our backup Sam guy. Could also do a little bit of Mike. But what about some of these other guys?
Yeah, I think Beckwith, more that we hear from him, he's ready to go. They're just being cautious with him. He's not going to be in OTAs, but I think he's going to be full speed training camp. That's the feeling that I keep getting. Devontae Bond, I'm real excited to see. Like I said, I keep 6, which was Quan Beckwith, Bond, Levante David, and then I picked Darius Glanton as my 5th. I like Darius Glanton a lot. Yeah. I know Scott Reynolds from Pewter Report does too. Yeah. I've said this a few times. If he got on the field for 10 plays, he made like 6 tackles. His play to making plays ratio for that defense was outstanding. And then I think that last spot comes down to a guy that was on the team last year, Cameron Lynch, and 2 guys that were brought in. The one we had trouble with, Riley Bulaga, linebacker, Michigan State, 6'2", 228, and I also think that Paul Magloire, linebacker, 6'2", 225 from Arizona. He's super interesting. He played for like 3 different colleges. I believe one was JUCO, but he played like quarterback, running back, safety, and finally like ended up at linebacker at Arizona as he bounced around. So I was just a really super athletic guy. Like the kid Riley from Michigan State, they're both downhill. I think these guys can both line up on the edge and hold the edge and also make tackles in the backfield and even get some pressure on the quarterback. That's why I bumped, like I've said a few times already. That's why I bumped the linebacker up to 6, because I think we're going to see 3-4 this year. And then that kind of breaks it down. That leaves like Cameron Lynch. That leaves like Jeff Knox, who was on the team last year. That leaves him out. Richie Brown from Mississippi State, rookie, leaves him out. But yeah, I think that McGlory and Riley Bulloga, yeah, somebody's going to kill us for not getting these right.
It's probably real easy. It's probably like Bullo. Yeah,
Bullo,
something real easy to say.
We're making it way too complicated.
Yeah.
He's got really great hair, by the way, if I remember correctly. Riley does. I think those guys have a real chance to make the team. Now, having said that, I remember last year watching Luke Rhodes, and I thought he was a lock because he logged something like 160 plays at middle linebacker for the Buccaneers, and it just turned out he wasn't going to make the team. They just didn't have another good middle linebacker in camp, and they weren't gonna put Quan, 160 plays in preseason. So, like I said, I thought that guy was a lock. He had all these plays and all these starts. So if you see these guys playing a lot of time, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a lock to make the team, because I think of any player in all of camp. Who did I just say? Sorry, I read something else. Anyway, the middle linebacker last year, that Rhodes, he played more than anybody on the whole entire team during preseason. So it's going to be an interesting thing. I think some of these undrafted free agents are actually gonna make the team this year, because I think they're going to be carrying more linebackers.
Yeah, and I think this more so than maybe any other spot on the team, we have the fewest carryover of starters from previous years. As well, and something interesting about this as I'm looking at this, with Devontae Bond, who was actually our draft pick from last year, spent the year on IR, Kendall Beckwith coming in. It's almost like we have 2 draft picks starting this year in this spot. And I don't mean starting as a meaning on the starting lineup. I mean starting as in like just beginning on the team. So it's kind of cool that it's like we're kind of getting this extra boost to linebacker that we just didn't necessarily have last year. So it'll be real interesting to see. I think I'm more interested to see about these new guys. And, Levante, there's been a big story that's come out about him this last week, something he said about, he just kind of wasn't himself last year, and something kind of clicked in and how that's going to be different for him this year. So I'll be real interested to see Levante coming in, see what he's got, what kind of step is Quan Alexander going to make going into his third year. All this should be a very interesting position group, I think, to watch overall, but it does still need some thinning as we, get out of camp and into that initial 53-man roster. All right, let's move on. We just have 2 more positions left. Cornerback. This one currently holds Brent Grimes, Vernon Hargraves, Jude Ajay-Barima, Josh Robinson, Ryan Smith, Javian Elliott, all names that we knew from last year, and a couple new guys, Maurice Fleming, Robert McLean, Jonathan Moxie, and Cody Riggs. What do you know about these guys?
Well, a lot of these guys, we know who they are. I was a little surprised that with the undrafted free agents, they didn't go out and get some bigger corners. All these guys are 5'10" to 5'9". Jude and Javian Elliott are the tallest, along with Maurice Fleming at 5'11". I picked 6 corners. So I got Jude, Grimes, Vernon, Josh Robinson, and Ryan Smith. Ryan Smith is obvious. Josh Robinson's going to make the team because he can play special teams. Ryan Smith is going to make the team because they really want to see him at cornerback. So that kind of leaves like the big jumble. Basically, I've got Javian Elliott, McLean, the guy they just signed. Used to play in Atlanta, but it's bounced around a lot. I think it was Philly and San Diego. It seems like he's only been sticking at one place, a place for just like 1 year. I talked to some Panthers fans, and I guess he started outside for them, and they said like you really want him, like you kind of, he's good for depth, but you don't really want him to start. Mike Smith said that he's going to actually come in and compete at nickel, and then get cross-trained at cornerback. So he might just be the automatic lockdown guy at 6. But the guy I've been keeping my eye on is Jonathan Moxie. mostly because I like his last name. But he's also from Boise State, so it's one of those, hey, coach, you should really give this guy a look. I think he can make your football team Boise State dirt cutter pipeline pickups.
Yeah, it could be very interesting to see. I think this is one of those that I think we'll see our guys back from last year, and it'll be interesting to see what the other guys can do. Though, this may be where a surprise cut or two comes into play. So, cornerbacks. This is a position, by the way, that I hear Scott Smith on the Buccaneers official podcast which is usually just the radio show that they do. He often talks about how cornerback is one of those positions you can just never have too many of. So if we can put 10 people on the roster that are all cornerbacks, he'd be great to do that. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what happens with where we go. Josh Robinson, though, he is in blue, and I think he's our new special teams captain. It's just my opinion. Maybe Brian Unger. It might be between those two guys as far as special teams captain. All right, let's move on. One more position to talk about, and this would be our safety position. This is the position that I have said needs the most upgrading in the past. So let's see how we did this year. We got our draft pick this year: Justin Evans, Keith Tandy, J.J. Wilcox, free agent signing. Chris Conti didn't leave town on bus seat number 4. We have Isaiah Johnson and Alex Carey. What do you think about this particular position group? We said we'd keep 4, and there's 6 here in this particular slot.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cut and dry who these are going to be, unless one of these guys just loses it. I mean, you have to lose it eventually, your athleticism and your play. But I think they're excited about J.J. Wilcox. I think he's excited to be here. He really wants to be coached by the Buccaneers, especially Mike Smith. I think Tandy's going to be given every opportunity to lose one of the starting safety positions in training camp. Like day one, he should be lined up as the starter. Obviously, Justin Evans isn't going to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. So that kind of narrows it down. It's like Chris Conti, Alex Gary, or Isaiah Johnson. And I just don't think those two guys, Alex Gary or Isaiah Johnson, can play better than Chris Conti. And basically because of his athleticism. Dirt cutter's high on Chris Conti. You've heard him say more than once that Chris Conti, has cover skills of a cornerback. He just needs to be more consistent, and they did bring him back. If any of those guys, I think Wilcox or Conte are on the bubble. Maybe Wilcox can't pick it up, and the only guy that I see I'm going to keep my eye on that's going to take a spot is Alex Gary from Appalachia State because I like his size. He's 6'2", 220. So be able to cover those big tight ends. You can come down and cover those big tight ends that are coming out, the 6'6", 6'5" tight ends that are running 4.5 40s. It's kind of the same reason why I was so high on Obi Melifonwu. Obi Melifonwu is the same weight, but he's 2 inches taller. So I'll be keeping my eye on Alex Gary. Isaiah Johnson was hanging around the team. Was kind of the depth things back and forth, up and down between the practice squad. So he knows the system, but this is probably the easiest cut and dry one there is. It's going to be, Conti, Tandy, Wilcox, and Evans. Yeah,
I think it'd be. Yeah, you said this of another player earlier, but I think for all 4 of those guys, it's their job to lose. That's who they have. That's who we're running with. If they go out and they show, unless one of these guys absolutely just amazes and impresses, if these guys just show what they're capable of, then it'll probably be those 4 is kind of what I'm thinking on safety. All right, guys. Well, that's it. That's our 90-man roster. Ren, before we get out of here, any kind of final thoughts on the overall roster?
It's so much harder to make this team than it was before. I remember last year when Dirk Cutter had the rookie tryout and undrafted free agent camp. He was like, man, there's a lot of good football players out here. It's like, we're going to let go of some really good football players. And with this draft being deep, you would assume that the rookie or the tryout signings and the undrafted free agents would be better because these guys, maybe last year actually would have been drafted. And none of that talk came out of Dirk Cutter during that 3-day camp. he basically said what I opened with was it's really hard to crack this lineup or make this team. I'm going to praise, Jason Light again, and I've done it all over the place. Within 4 years and 3 years, he set us up to be able to draft the best player on their board that way more than just their need, and it's a very solid, very nice roster. I like it a lot.
Yeah, it is certainly something that is worthy of getting Bucks fans excited for. So you hear that, Bucks fans, go ahead and get excited for this roster. I think as far as a closing thought that I do is just realize this is 90 people, which means 37 of them are going to have to get cut. Although we'll be able to bring 10 back for practice squad. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And certainly when we get down to that 53, that number will be churning, as the season goes on as well. So it'll be interesting to watch. But at this point, the roster's only going to keep getting better. Every move we make, I think, is going to be a move towards the positive for where we're going. So it'll certainly be interesting to see how it all shakes out. And with that, now, fans, we would like to know your thoughts on our thoughts of every single one of these guys. You can do that by shooting us an email to the Pewtercast, especially if you're going to talk to us about all of these guys, because there's a character limit in the other places. But shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com, or you can find us out on Twitter @thepewtercast or on facebook.com/thepewtercast. We do respond to all forms of feedback, particularly in our new fan interaction segment that will be coming up at the end of the show. And, doing so, it's just one of the more fun aspects of being part of this Pewtercast community of Buccaneer fans. Well, guys, coming up next is our top 3 surprise roster cuts. We'll be right back.
How does a bastard, orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Caribbean by providence, impoverished and squalor, grow up to be a hero and a scholar?
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Right now, for you, the Pewtercast fans, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This summer, I'm reading the book Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow. This is the book off of which Lin-Manuel Miranda has based his hit Broadway musical Hamilton. In the book, Chernow tells us the engaging story of a relatively unknown founding father who was key to just about every important event in the founding of the United States of America. And by the way, he was someone who made friends and enemies at just about every single turn. It's not hard to understand why Miranda was inspired to use hip-hop as the art form to convey Hamilton's story to the stage. To download Alexander Hamilton or any one of Audible's 180,000 titles that you can choose from, just go to audibletrial.com/thepewtercast. Again, that's audibletrial.com/thepewtercast for your free audio book.
See if you can spot him. Another immigrant coming up from the bottom. His enemies destroyed his rep. America forgot him. We fought with him. Me, I died for him. Me, I trusted him.
Me, I loved him.
And me, I'm the damn fool that shot him.
There's a million things I haven't done. Just to wait.
What's your name, man?
Alexander Hamilton.
Welcome back to the Pewtercast. You're listening to episode number 35, the Camp Roster. And for today's top 3, we thought we'd take a look at this roster as a whole, the 90-man roster, and see who we think might be kind of a surprise roster cut come to the paring down of the 53. So, Ren, I'll kind of toss it to you first. Was there any special criteria? I know this one's pretty cut and dry, but any special criteria maybe you had as you were picking your list, and what is your number 3?
No, like you said, it's pretty cut and dry. I guess it would have to be a name player that people thought, or made a big contribution to the team, or was a starter last year, or somebody that hung on to the team. I pretty much I kept it to starters. Let me put it that way. No, I didn't. Anyway, you're basically my criteria is it's going to be like raise an eyebrow, because that's it. It's going to be a surprise to you. But my number 3, I'm coming out of the gate strong because I have so many. But I think this one could happen, and I think it'll become a surprise to you. I'm starting with Charles Sims.
Okay.
It all depends on how Jeremy McNichols comes out. But as I was talking about earlier, it's like he's the perfect blend between Doug Martin and Charles Sims, like Jabbercast Rogers is. He's just better. Looking at his tape and his highlight reels in college, he can do what Charles Sims does out in space, except he's a better blocker in pass protection, and he's a better runner between the tackles. So if the Bucs don't go with 4 running backs like I said they would, and they want to start the season, I could very well see them starting the season with like Jabbercast Rogers, Jeremy McNichols, and Peyton Barber. Those 3 guys in the backfield. And Sims, I think it's his contract year, and he can't stay healthy. And he showed last year that he's just a one-trick pony. He's a weapon to get him out in space, but once he's back there and he's in the game, he's probably not going to be hand off the ball that much, or if at all. So he's kind of like a 2-minute drill. And now he's kind of pigeonholed himself as a 4-minute, 2-minute drill specialist where, no huddle, get down the field, 5 players out in the passes, running pass routes. And so I think Charles Sims is in real trouble not making this team this year.
I don't like this pick for you. I don't, and I'll tell you why.
Let's hear it.
Because I was just trying to find the notes on what we did. But first, let me actually give you my criteria, and the reason I don't like it is because what you just picked doesn't fit my criteria, which is always a good reason to like or not like something.
Yes.
Your opinion based on what I think it should have been. But my criteria was I had to consciously separate this from our last top 3, which was our top 3 players on the bubble, because those are kind of players that we kind of saw it coming, versus these are ones that we really don't see coming. And here's why I don't like Charles Sims. I think I called it. I think I've said Charles Sims before. And this is one that I do see coming. Like if it happens, it won't be a surprise to me. Like I won't be shocked. It could. Do I think Charles Sims will probably be on the roster? Yeah, probably. If I was a betting man, would I put money on Charles Sims to make the roster over one of these other guys? Yeah, I probably would. However, if he got cut, it wouldn't be a surprise, because for all the reasons that you just talked about, and he went out and put out some not very flattering game film on himself last year when he had a chance to step up to that number 1 spot and showed us he really can't do that. He's very good in the role he's in. And let's, as Jason Light often says, and other people, let's not forget, he's just 2 years removed. And that year in between, it was an injury year from being part of the best 1-2 punch in all of football, in the entire NFL league. So, that certainly speaks very highly to his benefit, but this wouldn't be a surprise cut for me, which is why I don't like it. But again, that's just based on my own personal criteria. But I 100% do agree with you that he is a person who could get cut. And I wrote him down for my honorable mentions list, but then I scratched him off. But he is, I guess, there because he's a person that I absolutely thought of for this list as well. So, yeah.
That's fair. I can understand that. I think it will become a surprise to Mux, but I think it will be a surprise if it comes to fruition for most Buck fans.
Well, not the Buck fans that listen to the Pewtercast, Ryan.
Oh, I just can't help it that you're smarter than most Buck fans.
No, well, we talked about it. You've talked about it. I've talked about it. We're all there. So, but that's why this podcast exists, to make Bucks fans better Bucks fans, smarter Bucks fans, more informed Bucks fans. I think I stole that from another previous podcast that's no longer around. Hey, let's move on. My number 3 pick is a guy that I think it could happen, and I think it's because it's possible that one of the other guys could come up and take his spot. And the big surprise being that this guy has a big contract he's still working on. And my number 3 is DeMar Dotson. He's a guy that I think he's towards the latter part of his career. I think this would be probably his final big contract that he could probably get. And I think it's possible that if one of these other guys comes in and really shines, or if even like a Caleb Beninock or a Leonard Wester or even Kevin Pamphile really shines, that DeMar Dotson could wind up getting cut. And I'm not saying that means he'll be out of the league. I'm just saying that he might not be in a Buccaneers uniform this year. So my number 3, DeMar Dotson.
I would totally agree with you if it was DeMar Dotson losing his surprise starters losing their job. I do not think there's any way he's not going to make this team. But I'm following your logic.
Yeah.
Let's see.
That's why it'd be a surprise, though.
yeah. I'm just checking. Well, he is. I just quickly looked up his contract details. So he does. Beginning this year, he has no dead cap money.
Yeah.
So,
Ren, I got a question for you about this. Do you just have like a heads up display on the inside of your eyelids that connect to some link somewhere that you can pull up this information?
Google Glasses flopped, but they work really well for me.
Jeez.
I'm just sitting in front of my laptop. I don't know. I pull things up that I think I'll need. Like tonight, I have the Bucs roster, and I have the depth chart pulled up from week 1, and then I just opened a new tab and typed in DeMar Dotson's contract, and I know you use the same one I do, which is Spot Rack or Spotrack. I don't even know how to say it, but you want to say sport because it's always about contracts, like sporting contracts, but there's no R in it, but it's after the T. So however you say it. But yeah, so I just typed it in, and I went to Spot Track and it popped it up. So
yeah, but it was really fast. All right, let's move on.
Sure.
All right, you're number 2. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll finish up. Yeah, it wouldn't count against him, the cap for if it would because he's on the roster, but the caps, they've already made the cap this year, so it would clear up $13.5 million next year and $18.2 million the year after that. If he didn't make the team, but I don't think that. Maybe next year he'd be, if we do this again, I have this category, he'd be there. He might lose his starting job. Dirk Cutter, like I said, mentioned it, and it wasn't preemptive. It was just like he was like, hey, we might try Kevin Pamphile over there, or Pamphile. Got used to that over there at right tackle. So, and I was like, what? But I'll tell you something that was scary. I didn't necessarily get to talk to him, but I was in a room with him. I went to the Pewter Report, their second bowling mixer, and Alan Cross and DeMar Dotson was there. I did get to ask a question, but it wasn't to DeMar Dotson. But right before I asked my question, Mark Cook talked to him, and I don't remember exactly how the question went, but basically it was about his concussion because he missed a couple of games last year because of the concussion. And when reporters asked Dirk about it, he's very he's like, I don't know. He's like, during concussion protocol, when they're back in the practice field, that's what he doesn't get involved with it, doesn't care about it, doesn't keep up with it. They're in concussion protocol, and when they're out and he sees them on the practice field, then he's ready to coach again. They're ready. They're back in the plans. But he told me, well, not me, he told us in the room that all he did was sleep for an entire week, and he couldn't even watch TV because that light, he was so sensitive to light, he couldn't even watch TV. That's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one thing to be like in a car accident that happened to you, or like a motorcycle accident that happens to you, but you're just playing a football game. And it's not like he took a knee to the helmet or anything. He was just, there's no injury. It's just like, banging on a defensive end, and he's out. He sleeps for a week and can't watch TV because it hurt his brain. I just thought that was really scary and kind of like, wow, these guys really are putting their body on the line, just to play this game, make a tremendous amount of money, but also. You gotta factor in quality of life, but I don't think Dot's going anywhere. So to move on from that happy story, my number 2, and this might surprise people. I hope it does. That's why I picked it. Is I'm scrolling to make sure I get his name right. Robert McLean, the guy that we just filled the last roster spot for, the cornerback. He's being brought in as a nickel, and to possibly be depth for outside corner. But he's got to get past Jude, who made the team as an undrafted free agent and played it very well. And then also Javian Elliott, who filled in for Jude once Jude got suspended, and he played very well. Not to even mention Ryan Smith. And I'm not sure if there hasn't really been a word if they're going to just play him outside corner altogether or he's going to play some nickel. But there's some competition there. If you have Jude, Grimes, Hargraves, Robinson, and Smith, that only leaves one open spot. Right. So basically it's going to be between him, Elliott, and him. If Ryan Smith is playing nickel, then that gives you two nickels that are already on your team, and then Grimes and Vernon Hargraves are the starters, and Josh Robinson's your backup. So you might want to go with Jonathan Moxey out of Boise State, or somebody else that's more suited for the outside nickel and not just the slot. So I don't think his spot on the roster is by any means solidified. He brings a lot of experience and he knows Mike Smith's defense, but like I said, he's bounced around, so it's not like he did start a Super Bowl, but it's not like he's nailed down a spot anywhere else he's gone. So for my number 2, that's who I got, Robert McLean.
Yeah, I've seen several articles about this guy over the last handful of days, where they just signed him and brought him in. And so, yeah, you usually don't expect to see a guy like that turn around and be cut. So I can get that. It's not a guy that I had anywhere on my list, but yeah, I can get behind it. That would that'd be a little bit of a what do you know? My number 2, I am going to a pick that would probably make a certain segment of Bucs fans happy. and could this be? I would not be one of them. But it would be a surprise.
I'm just scratching him off my honorable mentions right now.
It would be a surprise, and a surprise meaning I don't think this guy is going to get cut. However, if he does, my jaw would probably be a little bit on the floor, but I would also understand. But I would also be there, and I am, of course, talking about Doug Martin right now.
Oh, Jesus, no.
Yeah, I don't know. Who do you think I was talking about?
Aguayo.
No, not Aguayo. No, not at all. No, see, that one wouldn't surprise me. I would just be like, oh, yeah, not surprising.
I don't think you understand what the word surprise me, because you're picking people that.
No, I'm picking people that no. Here's what it
that are going to make the team.
No, yes. They might not, but they might not. We have seen people that you're like, whoa, that guy just got cut.
Jameis Winston got cut.
No, Jameis Winston will not get cut. That is stupid. That would be a surprise cut, but it's not one. These are ones that I think are in the realm of possibility, although I don't think they're actually going to happen. I.e. like a Luke Rhodes type of situation. Okay, and when you look at the offensive line, okay, you look at the
tackle and the
your starting right tackle, who, as you just pointed out, had a big concussion issue last year. Who, I know they keep saying we like our squad. However, out of all of those positions on the line, that's the one that I could see could get taken the easiest would be the right tackle, which would be DeBar Dotson. And given his cap hit and everything like that, that's why I don't think he's going anywhere, but I could see that happening, and that'd be a surprise. Doug Martin, for all the issues that everybody keeps running him down about, and if this other group comes in and gels, I don't think that any of them are going to take his spot. I think he is going to be on this team, but is it possible that Doug Martin could get bounced out? Yeah, it's possible, and it would be a surprise, and it'd be one that you go, whoa, that shocks me. Especially because then what you're really talking about is a Charles Sims, a Jacquizz Rodgers, a Jeremy McNichols, and probably a Peyton Barber really coming in and shining. Maybe that Blake Sims guy that we were talking about, Russ Hansborough, maybe, Quavon Hicks, probably not at all. But, they would have to beat him out, or something would just have to happen with him. But, that's why I'm picking it as a surprise pick. Guys that I do think would otherwise be on the team, but something could happen that would maybe bounce them out. That's why I picked those.
I hear you. I think the only thing that's gonna, the only way Doug Martin's not gonna make this team is if they can't settle on his contract, because I highly doubt they're gonna leave him at the money that he signed for, because all that money got null and voided with him getting busted for PEDs, which was obviously, I don't know if that's written in the contract. That's an NFL thing, but anyway, it did cover the Bucks. But as far as owing that money for years to come, now the Bucks could be they could be cool and do him a solid, and you've done all your things, you've lined your P's and Q's, you've done everything straight, and we will re-up you, week 4, prorated what we signed you for last year, but. I think in everyone's mind, everyone's thinking like, well, shouldn't we get him at a discounted rate? It's, he did let the team down, and, not only did he let the team down last year, he's also letting the team down this year, because the 4 games are spread out, and it will be 5 games he missed because he missed the Saints game.
Right.
And
that was kind of a voluntary,
quite a big game.
Yeah. That was kind of a voluntary benching, I suppose. And to that point of what you're talking about with the contract, what I would expect to see, because I talked about this, I think, earlier today on Twitter with another fan, what I would expect to see with the contract is something very similar to what they did with J.R. Sweezy, and that they go in and they rework it, and his base salary is going to drop quite a bit, but he will have the opportunity through incentives and stuff to be able to earn that money back. And that's what I would expect to see wind up happening with his contract, because I think they certainly will rework it. It won't resemble, I don't think it'll resemble what it has currently looked like. But that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And the other question I have, and Ren, you might actually know the answer to this. If let's say they don't rework his contract, right? So like all the guarantees are off the table because of the PED thing. All of that happens. If come week 4 they don't rework his contract and he just goes in, does that put all the guarantees and stuff back on the table? Like, does it reenact those if they haven't changed it by then, or does he just get to kind of stay at that salary rate and they could pull it from him at any given time? Like, do you know how that works? If they don't do anything with it?
I don't. All I know is that if they bring him back and don't rework it, that it's just, excuse me, I'm very sorry, it's prorated. Right now, he's looking to make this year $5.7 million and some change. I think I read those numbers wrong for Jameer Dotson, by the way. They weren't quite that high. But and then next year it's 6.7 and then 7 million for 19 and 20. I don't know. I would assume so. But like you said, I think they're going to kind of go the way J.R. Sweezy. And I asked that question. I'm like, I don't know why J.R. Sweezy reworked this contract. Why would you do that? Right. Basically, it just hurt him. Basically, he's going to make the same amount of money he's going to make unless he hurts his back again, and it puts assurances and safeguards for the Buccaneers. Now, Buccaneers might do the same thing with Doug. They might lower his salary, but then make it incentive-laden. And definitely, like, if you get popped for PEDs. But if he gets popped for PEDs again, I think he's out for a year. So, especially this year, because he has to go through, all the drug protocol and all the drug tests, and that usually takes a year before you can get out of that once you've entered it. So, I don't know. That's a good question. I should. I'm going to find out for you definitely on that, because that's the big. I think that's the big mystery for Buck fans, myself and yourself included. What exactly? Okay, everyone thinks Doug Martin's going to come back week 4, but at what price is he going to come back? I think that's the big mystery that everybody wants to know, because I feel like they should get a discount. And I think it's really smart how you talked about what they did with J.R. Sweezy's contract, putting in those safeguards for him. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I don't know. For me, I think I would play better with those incentives in there. I think anybody would play better with those incentives in there. And for J.R. Sweezy's spot, why would he sign that contract? Because it helps kind of protect him from the team. Because otherwise, they could just cut him, and then he'd be without. Versus this way, he kind of gives the team a solid. Protects the money that he really could go out and earn that money, but he does the team a solid and just ingratiates himself a little bit more, especially given that who was it? Was it Burger McFarland last year who said, "Congratulations to Sweezy for stealing $8 million from the Buccaneers" or something like that?
The same guy that guaranteed the Bucs are going to take Alvin Cook.
Yeah, that guy. I love Booger McFarland. I really do love him. Never met the man before in my life. All right, your number one, Ren. What do you got for your number one surprise? Although we may disagree on the meaning of the word surprise, roster cut that could be coming up this summer.
we're gonna change the word surprise to most unlikely. I've got a few here. Obviously, I'm going to save Aguayo because I ruined it for everybody. I hope you don't have that as your number one. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put, and this isn't really totally shocking. I have some ones that possibly could be more shocking, but I think this one would raise some eyebrows. And I think Ryan Griffin, the guy they've protected for 2 years.
Yeah.
If he falls on his face and just rent free just outplays him in training camp and makes better decisions and looks better with the offense during the preseason games, I only think they're going to keep two QBs on the roster. We talked about, if they bring in 3, if they have to bring in a veteran, we've talked about those scenarios. But if everything stays, the ship stays straight, it's a good possibility that Brian Renfree, beats out Ryan Griffin, and basically those 2 spots have been wasted for 2 full NFL football seasons. So my number one seems to be a hot topic, but the backup quarterback situation is Ryan Griffin. Would be surprising to people if he got cut and didn't make the team.
Okay, well, maybe you and I actually agree on the definition of the word surprise a little bit more than we think we do. So, because I would agree with you, Ryan Griffin is not my number one person, but that would hit every single qualification that I have for what a surprise cut would be, because we both have gone on record saying in this very episode that we think Ryan Griffin will stay on the team, and if he gets cut, that would qualify certainly as a surprise. And for all the reasons that you just listed, I certainly agree with you. My number one is a guy that, okay, these aren't like they're getting more and more outlandish and more out there as I go on. It's just the way that I rank them. And I can't really tell you why one was 3 and 2 and the other one was 1. This is just another surprise. I believe this person will make the team. Although I do feel like they could be unseated, and I would be surprised if they were. And I am going for my number one to the wide receiver room. And I'm talking about the guy that lives just up the street from me right now, though for not much longer, Adam Humphries.
You're crazy.
Yeah, he says I'm crazy.
Explain. I got to hear this explanation. Okay.
No, he just, this is a guy that came in as, he was an undrafted free agent a couple years ago, worked his way up. I thought he had a really great year last year. It was not as good as Cameron Brate's year, though. He contributed. He did a lot for the team. I don't know that he solidified himself. If they come in and they can find a better wide receiver than Adam Humphries, somebody who can come in and legitimately beat out Adam Humphries, then as much as I hated Adam Humphries is gone, I don't think that's true of Cameron Brate. I think Cameron Brate is really locked into his spot. And I don't see anybody who could come in and necessarily unseat him. Adam Humphries, it would be a surprise. You might even say it would be a shock, especially because we're looking at guys of the likes of Dante Dye, Josh Huff, Freddie Martino, Bernard Reedy, and a couple other guys we've never really heard of before. So that would be who's competing for that spot. But it is conceivable to me that it could be one of those guys, and that he would be somebody that would be a surprise. It'd be a surprise cut. I'd be really surprised. I wouldn't like it. I wouldn't want it, but that's my number one, and that's what I'm sticking with.
All right.
Ridicule. Go ahead. Ridicule me.
You're wrong.
I know I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Got it. Adam Humphries, if you're listening to this, because I know you listen to every episode of the Pewtercast, I love you, and I really want you to stay part of this team. I do.
I think.
And I hope I'm
mean,
wrong.
I've gone on record at previous podcasts about saying that that position could be upgraded, but I don't think with anyone on the team is going to. Maybe Godwin takes some time from him. They bounce a lot of players around, so he's not strictly – well, he is strictly slot, but the other guys like Evans and Godwin, who only played, I think, like 13% in the slot or 13 plays, I think it was in his whole Penn State career in the slot. DeJohn Jackson, like, they're going to bounce them all around. So, like, I think I said this earlier that I think it's going to be a four-man rotation between Hump, Evans, Deshaun, and Godwin, kind of like in different positions. Obviously, the two most on the field are going to be Evans and DeSean Jackson, but so a lot of things are going to go on. I don't think Adam Humphries is that'd be a little more than surprising if Adam Humphries got let go. So
and the other thing that Humphries has going for him, which is why I don't think he's going to get cut, but it would be a surprise to me if it did, but it's possible, is because he, unlike I think Chris Godwin, although who knows what Chris Godwin could also actually do, Humphries has established himself as also a pretty reliable returner in special teams. And while we talked a lot last year about, man, I get nervous every time I see Adam Humphries lining up back there, because if something happens to him, man, who knows what else we've got back there, because we're already thin at our wide receivers position. If you remember how many injuries we had last year. But the fact that he has some time, he has some experience doing that, and he was, relatively successful with that. That just plays in his favor of why I think he's going to stay on this team. But it could be there. So anyway, that's my number one pick, Adam Humphries. Honorable mentions. I know you've got quite a list over there of people you've not mentioned yet. Who are some of the people that didn't quite make your final list?
I've pared it down a lot since we started because, well, I just have. I'm going to go and start with Roberto Aguayo, and I don't think it would be a surprise to Buck fans. I just think it would make national news. Like, it would be on ESPN, like one of those, a cut day. Like, they only talk about the big names, like, oh, this person has, played like 6 years and had 2 Pro Bowls, and now they're cut by the Buffalo Bills. Aguayo would make that because he was such a high round draft choice. They traded up to get him. The most accurate kicker all time in the NCAA history. So he would definitely make the headlines, and I think it would surprise NFL fans as a whole. But as far as like Buccaneer fans, I don't think that, maybe outside the NFC South, I don't think anybody as a Kansas City Chief fan even knows that Roberto Aguayo has competition in here. You know what I mean? They don't pay enough attention to us, and they shouldn't. So I think I'm using Roberto Aguayo as one of my honorable mentions just because of the national surprise it would get. Yeah,
I like it. Anyone else?
Oh, yeah, I'll go down him. I mentioned this guy a little bit earlier, Clinton McDonald. He's had a really solid career. This will be his 8th year, starting to get up there long in the tooth. And the reason I'm just kind of talking about Clinton McDonald is because they're just getting away from his body type at the defensive tackle position. I've said it before, and I've even said it in this podcast. They've went out and got 3 defensive tackles that are over 300. They're like 320, 330 pounds. Tuiku Lovato, Siliga, and of course we went and got Chris Baker. So he's kind of getting squeezed out. I'm not sure. He also has problems staying healthy as well. He always misses a couple of games. So that was something that Clinton McDonald. I think he's going to make the team, and I think it would surprise people because he's a name and people that know. But I think that they're actively looking to replace him. And I don't think he'll even. Next year. This is kind of like a Demir Dotson thing. Like next year, I wouldn't be nearly surprised if he doesn't make it next year. If he doesn't make this year, I'll be surprised. And then finally, Luke Stocker.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have younger, more athletic tight ends. Like you said, we're keeping 5 of them. Only one of them has to go, but he does. He probably makes the most money. He can't get open. He can't separate. I should say he can get open, but the linebackers all over him. He can't run down deep seams. That's Cutter's offense. All basically he can do is block. And if you can find someone that can block and get open, just a little better than him, because like he really can't separate from anybody. He's just too slow-footed, which makes your passing window so much smaller that Jameis has to fit it in there because the guy's draped all over him. And once he catches the ball, he doesn't get any gains. Doesn't yards after the catch because the guy's all over him, and he's also not going that far down the field because he doesn't have the speed to get down there in time for Jameis to get him the ball, and once again because of separation. And if it's a lot harder to throw a pass over the linebacker's head and drop it into Luke Stocker, the closer they are together, the smaller the window becomes on that angle of the pass. So that's the reason I could see Luke Stocker not going there. If the tight ends were a little older, like it was Brate's like 4th year, and maybe let's say
O.J. Howard wasn't a rookie.
Well, I don't want to say that because he's just been on the team, but like maybe Alan Cross was his like 2nd or 3rd year. We had there's just a little more experience in the tight end room. Or, if there was a tight end coach that maybe was like his 3rd, 4th, 5th year, something like that. Like it was like a really good tight end coach that the whole league knew, like, you're the best tight end coach in the league. I would put a lot more chips in the basket of Luke Stocker clearing out. I think the only thing he's got going for him is experience and like being like a second coach in the room. Besides that, like, I don't think he makes the team.
Yeah, I also had Luke Stocker as an honorable mention for me, really for all the reasons that you said. Just because he's a guy that I could see being a victim of there's only so many roster spots available, and these other guys just came in and did it better. And he could potentially be one of those guys, but it would still be a surprise because he is a guy that I currently have in blue on my board. Clint McDonald was also another guy that I had. The thing I think that would be most surprising to me is he's one of these people that while he doesn't have the C on his uniform, he is often looked at as a captain on the defense, and kind of to what you were saying with Luke Stocker of being that presence for the tight ends, having a guy like Clint McDonald, and you granted you have Robert Ayers and Chris Baker and Gerald McCoy, you have these guys who are also having those voices, but still Clint McDonald does provide that and bring that to that room and to that part of the field, so that would be a little bit of a surprise. Again, he is also blue on my board as well. I also had Chuck Sims, which you mentioned he was, I think, your number 3, maybe your number 2 pick as well. But then a couple other guys, and again, these are really people that I initially have as blue or maybe even blue-green that I think could potentially get picked off. One of them is Jacquizz Rodgers. I don't know why. I think he'll be with us for those first, certainly those first few weeks, especially with Doug Martin being out. But if one of these other guys goes up there, or even the kind of the Jeremy McNichols thing, what if instead of being 4, we really only carry 3? That's where I kind of see Jacquizz Rodgers maybe being somebody who could be a surprise cut. Although I would if it was between Charles Sims and Jacquizz Rodgers, I would expect to see Charles Sims get cut first. I also had Judah J-Barima in there. I had Jacquizz Smith as another honorable mention. And that might be, I don't know. I find myself getting a little bit more of a bad taste, just the fact he hasn't signed his paper. And I know that's stupid. But what the heck is this guy waiting on? Like,
you're mad at him, so you're cut. You're cut.
You're done. You're out. But you look at the rest of the guys on that particular piece of the roster, Jacquizz, he was out. So Can he return to form pre-injury? That'll certainly be something. Jude Ajay-Barima, again, he's a guy that, we have that Robert McLean guy who just came in. Maybe he's going to take that spot. Or I think you even said Moxie would be another guy you'd be looking at. So, JV and Elliott, he certainly turned on last year. I think it was after Jude Ajay-Barima got suspended for his PED violation. So maybe those are some names that could take that. But those are the ones that I really had. And then kind of the one I think surprising one was that I didn't get to talk about at all was JJ Wilcox. I know that we just signed him, and that is certainly why it would be a surprise cut. But if one of these other two guys, Alex Carey or Isaiah Johnson, if they come in and really shine in camp, I don't necessarily know that I see them taking Chris Conte's spot, Keith Candy, or Justin Evans as our draft pick this year. So that would leave J.J. Wilcox as the guy on the out, as a surprise cut.
Yeah, I agree with all those. I actually had Conte, Tandy, and Wilcox down, and then I scratched them all out because I thought one of those four, they all have their downsides. I mean, Wilcox lost a starting job as safety last year in Dallas. The Chris Conte, his exploits are well chronicled on this podcast. and Keith Tandy, let's face it, he's been in the league 5 years now. Sometimes some players get into a defense and it just clicks. But he's been in the league 5 years and he's always been a backup and he's never been a starter. So there could be some reasons for that. But then you think about, well, he had Lovie Smith and the people he let go, and so it's not quite as strong an argument, but the argument is still there. Yeah, there's a lot of guys out there that could surprise you. And I even had, I think last week, Rodgers was one of my picks because I said by week 4 he might not even be starting anymore. And Doug comes back, you got McNichols, and you want to keep Charles Sims or you want to keep Barber. If you have McNichols and Martin and Barber, and then say you have one spot left, and you got Charles Sims or Chris Rodgers, well,
who are you going to go with?
Yeah, it's like Charles Sims does a lot better at what he does than what Chris Rodgers does. So I had him there as possible, but I don't think he's going anywhere at least until week 4.
Right, I agree. Well, fans, we'd now like to know how your picks stack up against ours. You can let us know on Twitter at @ThePewterCast or on Facebook.com/ThePewterCast, or shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. Ren, before we get out of here, why don't we take a look at this week's poll?
It's real bad, okay? I don't like those numbers at all.
Just one poll? Those things aren't scientific.
Yes, they are. All this is science. This is math.
Well, guys, this week, in light of all the new Buccaneers that have joined the team here over the offseason, I thought we'd ask the question in our Twitter poll, who is your new favorite Buck to follow on Twitter? And some of the choices we threw out there was Deshaun Jackson, Chris Swaggy Baker, OJ Howard, or you could tweet back your own response. Before we look at the winner, Ren, what do you think about this?
What do I think about what, the poll?
Yeah. Who is your new favorite Buck to follow on Twitter?
Who's my favorite Buck to follow on Twitter?
The new one. Which new Buck is your favorite?
Did you give the choices?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must
you zone out? Do we need to do that whole thing again?
I was zoning out on my new favorite Twitter follower. It's Chris Baker, Swaggy. He's just a true sports fan and seems like a really nice guy. He tweeted out a lot of his off-season workouts where he was doing the sand pit. You saw when the Bucks got back at Phase 1, they were doing the sand pit. He's doing a lot of the same things Quan was, just constantly tweeting about how hard he was working and showing video on that. I just think he's a funny guy. And then since he's from the D.C. area, he was really backing the Capitals in the NHL playoffs. And then when John Wall just recently, who plays for the Washington Wizards,
former Kentucky Wildcat. Go ahead.
Former Kentucky Wildcat, former one and doneer.
He was the original one and done.
I think really so was. For Kentucky. Yeah. Did they win a championship with that guy?
No.
Okay.
No.
Don't get sad. You have like more than anybody else.
No, we're close. We're
Oh,
close.
UCLA doesn't count.
It's time for 9. Okay, then fine. We have more than everyone else.
I mean, if you get a team that wins like what do they win, like 8 in a row or something?
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, well, it is hard, but basically, it was like kind of like the perfect storm, and since they've only won one since, I believe, you have a very good argument of being the better basketball program. But anyway, John Wall hit that last second shot against the Celtics, and Swaggy tweeted out to him, and he just seems like a cool guy that I could have a beer with, talk sports. Unfortunately, I'd have basically, I guess I'd have to talk, Capitals and Wizards, but whatever. For the choices that you gave, and I didn't really give it much thought past those, because there are a lot of undrafted free agents I'm following. OJ Howard really hasn't tweeted out much, and Deshaun Jackson is a much better Instagram follow than Twitter follower, for sure. So was Swaggy.
Fair enough. Yeah, this question was really inspired, I think, by a thing that Greg Allman did over at Tampa Bay Times, where he kind of looked at like who has the most Twitter followers, and Deshaun Jackson had something like 1 million. And the next highest Buccaneer was like Jameis or someone who had like 300,000. Like it wasn't even close, between the number of followers that they had. So that's what got me thinking about. But 23% of our respondents said Deshaun Jackson. 23 actually, equal amount said OJ Howard. But the big winner, agreeing with you, Ren, is Chris Swagger Baker. Following him on Twitter. Everybody, make sure you go give him.
What was his percentage?
48.
The rest?
Yeah, 48. Well, we did. Okay, to be fair, we did have 6% reply with your own reply, although not everybody always actually sends back the reply. Nick Citro, runner up with the Pewtercast first annual fantasy football league, said no doubt it was Quan.
Quan doesn't count. He's not a new buck.
Hey, that is true.
Sorry,
Nick.
Gene,
you are once again runner up.
Follow directions. I saw Gene. He kind of did it. He retweeted it. Put his the way he works Twitter is a little weird. He like puts his answer and then RT and then what the retweet was. I'm not really sure how he does it, but it shows up on Twitter a little different. But Gene from Buck What You Heard. He had Stevie T, Tui Golovatu.
He had Stevie T. That's right. What he's doing there, Ren, is that's the original way to retweet. That was before Twitter ever put in a retweet button. That's how you would retweet. Is you'd say RT and then you'd cut and paste. Then you'd have to say the name of who said it, and then you cut and paste what they said. So that's just an old school way of doing it. So hey, and speaking of Buck What You Heard,
labor intensive.
Yes, it was. That's why they put the little button in there. Speaking of Buck What You Heard, yours truly will be a guest on Buck What You Heard this week.
Yeah.
So everybody check that out on Thursday night, 10 o'clock on YouTube at his YouTube channel. I'm sure it's youtube.com/Buck What You Heard or something of that nature. So everybody make sure you check that out or catch the replay. Who knows? We may catch the audio of that and throw it up as a bonus content or something. So with his permission.
That's a big step for you.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, actual video. I mean, you don't like to show your face that much.
Yeah, I'm not that pretty, but it's okay. They can stare at me for a while if they want, or they could just block out the screen and just listen to the beautiful sultry sounds of my voice.
So what's that? Thursday night, 10 o'clock Eastern?
Thursday night, that would be the 18th, May the 18th at 10 o'clock Eastern time. You guys can tune in, and I'm not even sure what we're talking about. We're just talking about the Bucks. That's what I know. So who knows? Maybe it'll be a lot of the same.
He doesn't do a lot of show prep.
Yeah.
He just gets on there and asks some questions, and it's total organic, free forming, free ball.
Yeah.
Free ball. I don't know where that came from.
I'm going to ask him how much if he's wearing underwear, just because you said that. I'm as we close out this segment, I am a little jealous of those guys who can go out and just do it with zero prep. because man, it's a whole lot easier that way. But our show is not set up to do it like that. We actually have to do a little bit of prep coming into the show. So a lot more as the season goes on. So with that said, guys, that's actually going to do it for this segment. We've got our brand new fan interaction segment coming up. So make sure you stay with us. We'll be right back. Hey, Pewtercast fans, I just wanted to take this moment to say thank you to everyone who has been supporting the show. Whether you've taken the time to leave us an iTunes review, which helps new listeners find us, or you've sent us an email, you've tweeted us, or left us a comment on Facebook, we love interacting with you, our listeners. Or perhaps you've gone the extra step in helping the show out financially by leaving a one-time donation at paypal.me/thepewtercast. Every dollar goes back into making this show the best possible Buccaneers podcast out there. So in whatever way you've chosen to support the show, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And we're back. This is episode 35 of the Pewtercast. Now, Ren, last episode, we debuted a brand new segment. We kind of said, hey, listen, we read emails and fan tweets and different things like that. We used to do that up at the top of the show. But we kind of usually had to gloss over it. So we said, hey, let's move that to the back of the show and actually have spend a little bit more time being able to talk about it. So it was a lot of fun. And, we were able to just settle into it. So here we are again. We're going to spend some more time interacting with some of our fans coming across it. First of all, what'd you kind of think of getting to do it like this last week?
Yeah, I like it a lot better, honestly.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's just kind of like a glossing over and feels like you're like more just kind of cleaning house or
Mm-hmm.
dotting the I's or crossing the T's, and this way it's much more fun. We can talk about it a lot more, and because this is really what it's all about.
Yeah. And we asked several times, remind everybody, find us on Twitter, Facebook, email, several times. This is where we're going to be able to respond to those. So, send in those emails. If we've got 13 emails to read, we'll read 13 emails. If there's one email to read, we'll read one email, and look at some stuff out on Twitter. So, and for today, we have one email. So this one came to us from our very good friend, Chef Aaron.
Nice.
Yeah, who you just got to sit down and have some beer with, actually make a face-to-face contact with some people that we get to meet in this podcast community. Tell us how that was.
Yeah, Chef Aaron came down for the Bucks Uncensored party. He comes down a lot, apparently. He made it to the Rams game, and
Isn't
I think
he
another
like from
game last year.
Minnesota or Montana or somewhere like way the heck up there?
The Dakotas. I always say the Dakotas because I don't want to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If you held a gun to my head, I think he lives in South Dakota.
Okay.
But he might not live in North Dakota. I know the Dakotas are right, so that's why I always say Dakotas. I don't want to be rude and get it wrong.
Aaron's listening to this right now, and he's tweeting us the answer. Just so
no,
you know.
he's not.
Yes,
We're
he is.
recording.
Well,
you mean when he hears it-
metaphysically
when he
speaking, he's. That's me
Sorry.
talking to him, telling him what to do, just not directly.
Gotcha. My bad. So we'll slow on the uptake there. So we were talking back and forth, and I wasn't sure if I could make it to the party. And we definitely wanted to hang out and talk Bucks football, and we talked about it, a couple of times. And anytime Aaron has something he wants to say but doesn't want to put it on Twitter for everyone else to read, like he DMs me quite often. I mean, not like 3-4 times a day, but maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, and we'll talk about something back and forth, and he'll tell me what he thinks, and I tell you what I think. And so we decided to go meet up. Yeah, we're going to meet up for beers, and then it was Sunday so I guess the draft had just ended on Sunday. Yeah, we sat down and it was it only took us about 30 seconds. I've never met the guy before, never talked to him. Well, I guess we talked to him a couple times on the phone. I never talked to him without Brent. And it went great. And we sat there and talked Bucks, and bought him a couple of beers, and it was a good time. And we discussed everything about the roster and talking about how we're going to do the 3-4. But the place he stays is crazy. I didn't even know this place existed. It's just across this. This is down here in the Tampa Bay area. It's just across the Clearwater. I'm not even sure. I think it's the Bay to Bay Bridge from Clearwater to Tampa. And it was like one of those reality shows that you see like on Bravo or something, where it's just this huge party. Like there's sand out there, and everyone's like in bathing suits and in bikini tops and no shirts, and there's a DJ, and there's like 400 people, and everyone's dancing, and yeah. And I'm like, what is going on? All the waitresses are, walking around in bikinis, and I'm like, this is not my speed, Aaron. Like, what is going on? He's like, yeah, me and my girlfriend come down here. It's like this, all the time. But I think, that there was a wedding, so a few more people. I'm like, none of these people are in a wedding party. It was like South Beach. It was wild. But we found a quiet spot at the bar, the inside bar, and talk Bucks, and it was really cool. It was a lot of fun. I wish I could do that more often with people that are fans of the show, or follow me on Twitter or any of that stuff, because it's hard, and I'm sure it's way harder for you, Brent. But it's hard to find somebody besides Twitter that you could talk Bucks to.
Yeah.
You can't go out and hang and have a beer and to talk people that are knowledgeable. And I'm not bragging, but not as knowledgeable as we are about the team, so their questions could be very basic. Right.
Well, to that point, and this was not a guy who was knowledgeable about the team at all, and this is not so much fan interaction. But I was at a Sam's Club the other day, had a Buccaneer shirt on, and a guy's like, kind of like starts giving me grief over the Buccaneers. And I was like, man, you got to watch. We're coming up. We're going to be in the playoffs this year. I'm just telling you. He's like, yeah, not with that quarterback that y'all have. And I was flabbergasted. Like, I didn't know what to think of that. I was like, are you serious? Like,
do you know we have Jameis Winston?
Do you know who Jameis Winston is? Like, what are you talking about? And the only thing I could think about in that moment, and I think what I said to him was something like real snappy. Come back, I was like, yeah, we'll let history decide that. Because I don't think I was wanting to get into a thing, about some of the allegations and stuff that he's had. I didn't want to get into that, like shouting over 3 people in the middle of Sam's Club, So I came back with a real witty retort. But I remember people saying, with the Hard Knocks thing, like people are finally going to get to know our team. They're finally going to get to see, kind of on a national stage in the national media, who these guys are. And Jameis is certainly going to be a big part of that. So anyway, as you say, it is hard to find people who are actually knowledgeable about the team.
Agreed. And I live here, so
I was in the middle of upstate South Carolina.
They're fans, and it's not their fault. They're fans. It's my fault because I'm in way too deep. Like, I know more about the team than any fan should. And that kind of sounds strange, but I am,
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the draft ended, I'm on Twitter and I'm following, Trevor Sikkema and Greg Allman to see who are all the undrafted free agents they signed. I'm looking them up on YouTube.
Right.
That's what I did after the draft. I mean, so yeah, I understand. It's my fault that I can't talk to, average Bucks fan because I know everything they do already.
And that's why you are the co-host of the Pewtercast. Hey, let's get to Chef's email. What do you think about that? Get back to this segment. Yeah, this email. Honestly, it's just about everything we've already talked about in this episode. He says, do you think it's a risk to go into training camp with the running backs that we have? And do you see them dipping into the free agent pool and grabbing a more experienced backup quarterback? He says, to be honest, I have little to no faith in our backup QBs since they have no real in-season playing experience. Cheers, Brent and Rendax. And then he gives us a little emoji of a beer or a cup of coffee. One of the two, I'm not sure. It is also sent from his iPhone, by the way. So Aaron, Chef uses an iPhone. All right. So yeah, let's talk about it. We've covered it mostly, but do you think it's a risk going into the training camp with the running backs that we have? We'll take that question first.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
I think we have a running back to take over the need for every situation that arise in a game. We have a running back with the skill set to take care of it.
Yep. Yeah, I think we're good. I really do. It's a position I'm a lot less worried about it today than I was 6 or 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. Though I don't think I was ever as worried about it as several fans were. So running backs, do you see him dipping into free agency pool and grabbing a more experienced backup quarterback? Particularly having any kind of, I think we both already talked about that and said, no, we don't really see that happening unless an injury happens and prevents the guy who actually won the spot from competing. Does that still hold true for you?
Yeah. Nothing's changed in the past hour.
Yeah, I think they'll. Yeah, exactly. 2 by the time this episode gets done. There's that. And any faith? What is your faith in our backup quarterbacks since they have no real season playing experience? I think that's a legitimate concern with Ryan Griffin, Sean Renfree, and Seth Lee.
Oh, don't worry about him. He's not making
Sethiel. We'll call him that. That's a real concern about those guys. What do you think?
Yes, it is. And how much faith do I have in him? I have zero faith in him. But what I do have faith in is Jason Light and the Bucs coaching staff. They're very big on development and coaching people up, and we've seen it. We've seen them go into Carolina with guys off the UPS truck and mailmen and on the defensive line and win a game on the road. On Monday Night Football. It was a boring game if you weren't a Bucs or a Panthers fan, that's for sure. But what I also liked about it was, excuse me, that's when Drokiz got 100 yards, but he ran the ball like 30 times. But why did he run the ball that much? It's because they were running the clock down and trying to keep the defense off the field, because they know that the more plays the Panthers got, the more holes they were going to find in that, signing people off the street defensive line. And the defense wasn't nearly as clicking. That was during the bad period. We still almost lost that game. Brent Grimes 2 plays in a row saved us. So, that's why I have faith in the coaching staff, because they recognize their weaknesses and they game plan around it and to it. So, which is always a sign of a great coach.
Yeah, what Ren said. I'm gonna go with that. Exactly. So, Chef, thank you so much for your email. Please keep sending them in to thepewtercast@gmail.com. And if you guys would like to be part of this, we'd love to know your thoughts. We give you guys lots of stuff you can talk to us about, or you just ask us questions. We'll answer questions. We are certainly just going to give our opinions on what that is. A couple other things. We had a YouTube comment come across. This one was actually a couple weeks ago, Ren, but it's talking about you. It says the co-host is a nice touch. So that's very fun.
That's it?
Yep, that's what they said. The co-host is a nice touch. So
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
That is the one and only comment we've ever had on our YouTube channel. By the way, you can check out the Pewtercast on YouTube if you want to sit and stare at a picture of our logo while we talk for 2 hours.
I don't know if checking out the right verbiage there.
But I'm always surprised at how many people listen to the YouTube channel. It's not a ton, but it's more than I would ever think would actually do that. So
I've actually listened to it, so sometimes it'll pop up on my timeline, like past episodes and stuff. And like you said, it's not a lot, but it's like, really? It's like 45 people sat there and stared at the logo and listened to it. I mean, it's great. Maybe that's the only outlet you have, or you don't have enough memory on your phone to download, because those Android apps, like the more you have to download, you have to keep clearing them out, or they will take up all the memory on your phone. So I could see it's one way to do it.
Yeah, for if you guys are listening on YouTube, let us know. I'd love to know who listens on YouTube. Just because I'm just really interested. But hey, guys, go listen to YouTube. We're out there. Another place that we found out that we were actually on. I didn't know. Ren, I messaged you about this because we got a comment. It's a first time comment on this particular, on the Podbean app. And I texted you and I said, we're on Podbean? I didn't know that. I didn't even know we were on Podbean. But it was just a basic comment. It said, this show rocks, or this show is really great. So thank you to whomever that was. I don't know. I didn't see a name listed with that. But I appreciate that. But hey, listen, Pewtercast is out there, man. I've said it many times before. We're on just about any podcasting platform you care to find us on. We are available. So I appreciate those two comments leaving us there. And hey, listen, you can leave us comments there, but you can also leave us a comment on iTunes. Only on iTunes they call it a review. It's basically the same thing. And here's the difference. If leaving it on iTunes will actually help other people find us. So make sure you go over there and do that on iTunes. Even if you don't listen on iTunes, just jump over to iTunes, leave a review, and then go back to listening to it on Podcast Addict or Podbean or YouTube or iHeartRadio or Overcast, Jabbercast, Stitcher, any of those other places where you can find your favorite podcast as well. So we had those, and let's hear on Twitter. We had a couple comments come through this week on Twitter. One of them, kind of the big one, I guess, that happened, Ren, which I'm interested to see what your response is. And a Twitter person said this, and I think it's something we probably at least have to comment on. It says, thank God for at the Pewter Report and at Pewtercast. Buck's local media is filled with quote unquote drama queens concerned about personal notoriety and not football. Now that was followed up with a bunch of likes and retweets and a couple other different comments, but it certainly seems like that is a very pointed tweet to another Buccaneers podcast that is going on out there, and maybe some other stuff, because there seems to be this. I honestly, Ren, I don't understand it, but there seems to be this little war that's going on out there between some of the different Bucs media outlets. So
no, there's not.
Okay,
there's one person. There's one person. That's no one's fighting with anybody. There's one person fighting with people, and he's bringing his listeners in and telling who to attack and who not to attack. So there's no one fighting. No one's fighting with Justin from Bucks Uncensored.
Okay.
Like, there's no pushback against him. He's just picking out people, and then he, sicks his listeners on them, and it hasn't been pretty or cute, to be honest. So I'll let you finish up.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and talk. Yeah, go ahead and talk, brother.
All right. Everyone knows what's going on about Twitter. All right. Just for the quick backstory, Scott Smith, who writes for Pewter Report, has been covering the Bucs for
Scott Reynolds.
Scott Reynolds. Sorry. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about. Scott Reynolds, been covering the Bucs. He founded Pewter Report. Been covering for over 20 years, and he wrote a piece about Ira Kaufman and giving him some. Well, basically, he was saying that Rondé Barber is going to be a special case to get in because of the position that he played, which is nickel slot, and his stats are not like
to get into the Hall of Fame.
To get into the Hall of Fame. Thank you for clearing that up for me. Yeah. His stats are different than any other corner. He has more sacks, but he doesn't have as many interceptions, and it's just a whole new ball game of how defensive has switched to, basically nickel being the base defense, and Rondé Barber is just the first one to come up that was good enough to get consideration for the Hall of Fame. And given Ira's past, where it's been 4 times in a row that he has failed to get John Lynch in, I thought it was a fair thing to say. I thought it was a fair thing to ask. He didn't really tell Ira he doesn't know what he's doing. Right.
Ren, let me
go ahead.
Because Ira Kaufman is the representative from the Tampa Bay area to the National Football League Hall of Fame. So he is the guy who is advocating for Buccaneers to be in the Hall. And so that's where not being able to get John Lynch into the Hall of Fame and get the people who vote for John Lynch. And that's where Scott was kind of coming from, of just saying, hey, you're a guy who represents us. take what you want out of it. But so yeah, that's why it's actually important for Ira to be able to do this.
Yeah, and Scott Reynolds was making a point that this is going to be a unique challenge for him.
Yeah.
Now, Ira Kaufman works for Joe Buck's Fan now. Obviously, we all know Joe Buck's Fan. We all like Joe Buck's Fan. And they came out on their podcast after Scott Reynolds wrote that and stood up for Ira, rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a little overboard with the personal attacks on Scott. They never mentioned his name. But, if someone comes after your guy, which he really didn't, but you definitely have to come up with a rebuttal, like, I don't agree with this or I agree with that. I think they handled it a little wrong. It's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter what I think about the way they handled it. And then Justin got a hold of it. And Justin has made it his person. It's really weird how.
Well, to be fair, even with that, Scott and Ira, who are colleagues, they see each other every single day in the press room and stuff. They were able to get together and hash it out and squash it, and they posted a picture on Twitter.
Ago.
Yeah, weeks. It was like
ago.
They were kind of like play boxing with each other or something like that. Like between them, the two people who are actually involved in this thing, they squashed it. So carry on. Sorry.
Right. So Justin from Bucks Uncensored picked it up. We all know what's like. Everyone's following along, and Brent's filling in the gaps where I'm missing. And thank you very much for doing that. But so it's just funny how he's made it all about him and his podcast and his followers. In a, you can't even call it a fight. It was like, Ira Kaufman. His record hasn't been too good. He's got a really hard challenge coming up. Real Bucks talk, and Ira Kaufman rebutted, and that was the end of it. But Justin took it as a personal slight. Now, before I get into the part where I don't like, and I think is actually detrimental to Bucks fans, I would like to say that there are many things that I like a lot about Justin, what he's doing at Bucks Uncensored. He threw a great party. Chef Aaron came down there. Javier, remember Javier Carlos from Panama
City? Yeah.
Javier went to that party. Javier flew in from Panama to
Cool.
that party. He got a lot of Buck peoples together. Ira Kaufman was at that party. Both the guys from Joe Buck's Fans was at that party. It was a really great place for Buck fans to watch the draft. If you didn't want to go to Raymond James Stadium, that was pretty much your only official, unofficial Bucks party to go watch the draft. His listeners make T-shirts. I saw on Twitter today some extremely talented artists. They've been calling Dirk Cutter the Godfather. Some extremely talented artists. Looks like an oil painting. I didn't look at it too much, but did this painting of Dirk Cutter kind of in the suit with a little Buccaneer pendant and like a Godfather pose, like it would be behind his chair at his desk as he's reigning over the Bucks. He's going to be doing a lot of huge tailgates. Section 119 is becoming sort of like the stick carriers. That's his mantra. Mm-hmm. Is the stick carrier section of the Bucks. Fans are very excited. And a lot of it is due to him for what he's done. But he's taken it, in my opinion, he's taken it way too far, and he's actually hurting Buck fans. He's taking this umbrella of all inclusiveness, it's like we're all Bucks fans and we're all under this umbrella and we're all going to make this work. But then he's dividing fans because he's telling them not to click on certain websites, not to go to them, not to follow certain people. And then he's also gone as far to tell outlets what they can and when they can write it. One of his beefs is that I can't believe Scott Reynolds actually wrote that. He's calling it a hit piece against Ira Kaufman, which is, once again, that's a little much. I don't want to go as far as call it ridiculous, but it's a little much to call it a hit piece, especially if you read it. And he said, he says things like, "You have nothing better to write during the draft, like a week before the draft." So it's getting to the point that if Justin from Bucks Uncensored doesn't like what you write, doesn't like what you have to say, he's using this mob mentality that he has fevered up, and he's releasing them on these people on Twitter, and it's getting nasty. And he's talking about the Bucks media are trying to divide us. No, the only person that's trying to divide us is you. It's Justin. It's Bucks Uncensored. There was no division between Bucks fans before this started. Like, I didn't look at a Bucks fan and see him and be like, "Oh, are you a Pewter Report fan or are you a Joe Bucks fan? You know, do you listen to Real Bucks Talk.com or do you listen to this?" Now, if I see somebody in a Stick Carrier T-shirt because they make them and they're cool, I mean, I like them. Like, I don't really want to go and talk Buccaneers with that person because I'm afraid that they're going to get mad at me if I say something that if I talk about something that was only talked about on Pewter Report or was only talked about at another place. He's gone as far as asked for a public apology. He said this on his podcast. If you give me a public apology, I'll tell my listeners to start clicking on your stuff again. Like, what is that? I don't I don't understand when Justin, I'm going to say his last name wrong, Justin Pulowski, I believe it is, has become the moral gauge and be-all, end-all of telling anybody, let alone me as a Buck fan or anybody else as a Bucks fan, where I can go and get my Buccaneers information. You know he's not, and here's the kicker. Here's where you start to see through this facade. I mean, it's all fun and it's all good, and you know, it's like yip yay. You know, eventually you're gonna burn out. You know, you're gonna run out of people to get pissed off at. You're gonna burn out, and you realize that you're doing nothing but really hurting Bucks Nation. Now he's talking about clickbait and negative articles, and we're not going to click on your stuff. And he's telling people not to click on certain people because they write negative stuff. Tom Jones, once again, was on the Twitter, and all day yesterday, or maybe it was 2 days ago, we're recording this Monday night, it was 2 days ago where he was on there, and he'll talk to you. He'll defend his article about how he said, like, pump the brakes, Bucks fans. You know, there's still some holes in the roster, which he's absolutely right. But since Joe Bucks fan didn't write it, or, you know, Gil didn't write it, who writes for Joe Bucks fan, or he didn't bring it up on his podcast, then he sends the mob. He basically releases the hounds, and all these guys start piling on Tom Jones, and they're saying like we don't like to curse on this. I don't like to curse at all in my life. We're not going to curse on the podcast. Every once in a while we do. But they were saying really nasty, mean things to him. And Gil, who Echoes from the Cave, that article appears on Saturdays for Joe Bucks fan, he came and sort of defended Tom Jones. And he goes, in all honesty, he's like, I kind of wrote the same article a couple of weeks ago. There was nothing from Jason like, go attack Gil. Because he was saying, like, Tom Jones, like, he was tweeting out Tom Jones's name and more or less saying, guys, this is what I'm talking about. This is the negativity. The hashtag evil media, the Tampa Bay evil media. So I know I'm totally rambling, and I could honestly break this whole thing down in an hour to show you, to talk about how upset and dumb and acidine I think the whole thing is. There's Buck content out there for everybody. Listen to what you want to. Don't listen to what you want to. Read what you want to. Don't read what you want to. But publicly going after people, it's too far. And the only person who's dividing Buck Nation and Buck fandom is Bucks Uncensored. And that's what I have to say.
So another Twitter commenter in this thread, because a lot of people pointed this directly towards the Bucks Uncensored, said, you know, the great thing about online media, this is from @irate_king. The great thing about online media is there is something for everyone, and I personally appreciate everyone who brings me free Bucks news. I liked that response. I liked that response a lot because I thought it was very level-headed, very cool-headed. Into what they do. You know, here's the thing. There are over 14 Buccaneer podcasts right now that are dedicated just to Buccaneer podcasts, to the Buccaneers. That doesn't include a couple of the other ones that cover all Tampa Bay sports, and the Bucs happen to be one of those. And just this week, I was contacted by two separate people asking me, "Hey, how do I start my own Bucs podcast?" And
really?
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, two separate people. So, there's potentially more coming on the way. And I gave them both the same advice. I'd say, hey, listen, there's a lot of podcasts out right now. When we first started, there was 3. We became number 4. There's 14 right now. Find what other people aren't doing, find what's not there, and try to fill that gap, because there's different podcasts that serve different segments of Buccaneer fandom. And we don't all have to like the same podcast or listen to all of the same podcasts. There are some who do. There are some, like our friend Chef Aaron, who soaks up everything he can get that's Bucs related. Which is awesome. And I'm not going to sit here and run down Bucs Uncensored. I personally had to stop listening to it a while ago just because it's not me, and I have no hate. I have no, they want to call in and cuss and rant and rave. That's the uncensored part. I get it. That's fine. It's just not stuff that I am personally interested in. But that is what it is, and I understand why people enjoy and want to listen to that particular type of thing. It's a cathartic relief. But here's what I would say to everybody, and I would hope that all of Bucs fans are able to sniff out and just remember the idea that we are all Bucs fans. And I've often said of Justin in his podcast, I love about 80-85% of what he says. It's the other 15, and not just him, but some of the people who call. It's the other 15% that I can't get on board with. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people who have much higher percentage of stuff that they can't get on board with, stuff that we say.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. So
and Justin knows the game.
Yeah.
I loved listening to his old podcast with Luke Egersing. I love listening to it.
Sure.
He's extremely knowledgeable and he knows the game, but I just don't think he sat back and thought about really what he's doing. It's like, and I'm not trying to run down his podcast. I think it's great for Buck fans. I love everything about it, except when he's calling personal. I don't understand why. I just don't get it. When did he become if you don't, it's fascist. It's like if he doesn't like it, he's going to shout it down, and he had his army of followers to do it for him. It's fascist, maybe a little strong, but it's definitely in the area. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You were saying?
Yeah. And here, here's what I would say to people is just remember, guys, we are all Bucs fans. And the idea, Ren, you kind of said it, to say, oh, are you in the Joe Bucs fan camp or are you in the Pewter Report camp? I think that's ridiculous. Because we're all Bucs fans. There's the Pewtercast camp. There's the What the Buck camp. There's the Bucks and Brews camp. There's the this camp, that camp, the Scott Smith, the Casey Phillips, the TJ Reeves camp. To be in different camps is retarded. We're all Bucs fans. And to be able to go and unite Bucs fans around one rally cry and to bring us together and to say that with one side of your mouth and out of the exact other side of your mouth be divisive, that's where I would urge caution to people who are listening, and I would urge wisdom and really just kind of issue a call for civility when it comes to that. Of guys, okay, it's time to pull back. And hey, listen, Justin, if you ever get a hold of this, because I'm sure somebody will probably say, "Oh, did you hear what those guys at the Pewtercast said?" Justin, you're more than welcome to come on this show at any time and talk to us about this. If you want to come talk to us about it, you're more than welcome. I leave that as an open invitation, and to be able to do that. But I hope what people hear out of this is we love the Buccaneers. We love the fans and this community that we have all together. The Buckaholics, the Buckheads, the stick carriers, the whatever you are, whatever you find out. We're all in this together. We all want to see our Buccaneers win. We all want to have a good time together. We all want to do it together. Hopefully we get to do it together at Raymond James, and hopefully we get to do it together out at other team stadiums as well. So, I think that's the piece I would say there, but, find whatever it is you like that speaks to you. If it's us, if it's not us, if it's one of these other ones, that's fine. But I would certainly, the thing that has me worried is, Ren, I think what you're feeling as well is the idea of causing division within our Bucks fandom and separating us out into different camps. So that would be the thing that I would urge all of our listeners to really listen to.
Yeah, and I might have went a little too hard about it. For that, I apologize. I stand by everything I said. I just maybe said it with a little too much angst or passion in my voice. But the only reason, like, I wanted to leave this alone. I really did. Like other Buck podcasts have talked about it, but they've sort of like, stepped around the issue, which is fine because it might be the smarter way to do it. But no one was everyone was saying there's a lot of Bucktown out there for everyone. Listen to what you want to, don't listen to what you want to. And that was it. And no one was actually using Justin's name, and no one was actually, saying, because I don't like I don't like it. Like, I'm getting mad again. I just think, I think somebody from the Bucks podcast, 14 of us, had to say something, and actually use his name and say, I don't like the way you're taking this. Now, tell me to fuck off, fine. I would if I were you. I get it. It's your podcast. Do whatever you want. But I'm going to come out, instead of being like the politically correct person, and say, go listen to you want to. I don't like it, and I think it's dangerous, and I think it's reckless. That's all I'm saying. Probably.
I would agree. And at some point, somebody's got to say something about it. And hopefully we have. And that's what that is. And to reiterate, we like most of what that is, even though we don't personally ascribe to everything. But that's yeah. Bucks fans, just be together. If somebody is trying to divide you, be smart about it. And you don't have to follow everything exactly as you don't have to follow us 100%. Like, take what's good about it and leave the rest. I think is really kind of what we're saying. And that's for us. That's Justin. That's everybody else who's out there. Take what's good, leave the rest. Well, guys, on that happy note, I think that's going to wrap up this segment as well as this episode. You can find me.
Sorry.
It's all right. You can find me personally on Twitter at Brent Allen Live. Certainly the show here is at the Pewtercast. Ren, where can people find you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where can Justin and all the stick carriers find you? Go ahead. Twitter handle, address, mail,
I drive a beige car. No, at Rendax on Twitter. It's the easiest way, and it's usually what I'm on mostly anyway. REN, the capital REN _DAXT. You tweet at me, I'll answer you. I'm not really sure if I'm expecting blowback from this or not. So we'll see, and I'll let you know. But whatever you have to say, I'll sit there and have a conversation with you on Twitter. That's for sure. So REN _DAXT.
And he lives at 3542 Sanborn. No, I'm just joking. Guys, as a final reminder, you can get in touch with us about anything we've talked about today, from the 90-man roster to our top three to some of these fan interaction pieces at the Pewtercast on Twitter, facebook.com/thepewtercast. Or if you got a little more to say, you can do thepewtercast@gmail.com. Well, guys, that's going to get it. So until next time, my friends, 2 weeks from now, go Bucks.